Right. 1, 2, 3, check. You're tuned in to the Effective Mindset podcast. However, today I have something special for you. Namely, I have just done a guest appearance on the UnCommon Conversations podcast, hosted by Jordan Farmer. You can find Jordan on YouTube. The name of his channel is Uncommon Ground. I have dropped the link in description so that you can find him and listen to this conversation on his channel, if you will, as well as check out more really interesting conversations he had with other people. And cut the long story short, the podcast we just did is 3.5 hours long, and to this date, I think this is the most interesting conversation I had with anyone on air. And he's a great guy. So, without further ado, this is episode 19 of the Uncommon Conversations podcast with Jordan Farmer. Here we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Farmer. This is the Uncommon Conversations podcast, episode 19. Today's guest is actually the host of another podcast called the Effective Mindset podcast. His real name is Mike, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of things, lots of topical stuff, lots of stuff that's in the news right now. Hello. And I think it'll be very interesting for you guys. All right, here he is. So we're going to get into it pretty quick. Mike, you just got to do the request to join in that little camera icon. Yeah, there we go. Comments are going off. Hello,
Hi,
sir.
Jordan. Hi, Jordan. Just Mike. Mike's fine.
Okay. So how you doing? How's your day going, bro?
Living the dream. Actually, had quite a lot of work today going on, with the podcast and everything. But yeah, so far so good. I've been really looking forward to it. So we finally get to sit down together and let's do it. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited for this.
Right.
It's interesting always whenever I get to talk to another podcaster. Huh?
Yeah, no, sorry. Go ahead. I was just trying to adjust the brightness. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's a little dark. But yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying it's always nice talking to another podcaster, and it's always interesting because you very much had a bunch of things you wanted to talk about, and I really like that you had something in mind. That isn't necessarily always the case, but so I appreciated that quite a bit. And in terms of like how I'm doing, in my personal life, I'm pretty solid. Obviously, things are crazy right now in the world, so I'm a little bit, anxious. We're looking at things. We're in a very serious time. Let me adjust this a little bit. We're in a very serious time, so I have a little bit of low-level anxiety with that kind of stuff. But the only way to solve that, in my experience, has been with work and trying to do something about it to the degree you can, and whatever is beyond your reach, just let it go. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I'd say you're totally on point. The way I see it, and slight anxiety, or however you put it, that's slightly put. I've been dealing with lots of anxiety, lots of headaches, lots of borderline depression over the past year and a half, and really the only effective way to deal with that that I found is through trying to work it out. Literally, just rather than trying to sweep it under the rug or whatever, anything like that, it's never going to work. You have to try and break it down into small pieces, and then you have to work it out, as effectively as you can. And if it starts with a conversation, and that's how it usually starts, then I think we're at the right place, right time, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Yeah, it's interesting because there were many people who during the pandemic and over the last 18 months have sort of had depression or had lots of things hit them that were new for them. I was one of those few people who was sort of joking about how my lifestyle didn't change with the pandemic, because I've always kept to myself, always been very isolated. Not that I don't like interacting with people. Obviously, I can talk and whatever, and I've had friends. but I like to be secluded. I like to study and just absorb a bunch of information. And when I do talk to people, it's usually with a purpose. It's usually with the with some sort of not that there's underlying motivations, but like if we're gonna talk about our lives, let's actually talk about our lives. Let's not just fluff it up for the sake of getting through a conversation.
Sure.
And so that plus lifelong depression plus lifelong anxiety issues meant that by the time the pandemic came around, I was sort of starting my slow pull up out of my psychological issues. So I was sort of on the ascendant as everybody else was getting dragged down. And so I kind of felt like I was in the pandemic, but not in the pandemic, so to speak, which is interesting. But yeah, those tools, trying to break things down and piece it together and take it in whatever bite-sized bits you can. That's the only way you could do it. For me, it's been marginal, small, microscopic change day after day after day that just adds up over months and months and months. And, a year or 2 years later, I can look at myself and be like, all right, I've shifted some things up. I actually made some progress. That's kind of how it works for me. So.
Straight up, and that's speaking of lifelong depression and anxiety and all that, let's just put it this way: I've had my fair share of personal struggle, trying to figure things out, trying to find my place in the world and all that. It's we live in a pretty fucked up times. I'm sorry, I don't know if I should be swearing.
You can cuss. I don't care about cussing on this. It's all good.
Cool. So speaking of depression, I have been on my way out of that for the past 3 years or so. My darkest moment in my life was when I was 27 years old. That was back in 2018. I have literally hit the rock bottom in my life at the time. I ended up on the street, not really having anything going on. I had to start from the very beginning. So that's when I started working on my anxiety and my depression and all that, taking a different approach, started working on it entirely differently than I have been up until that point. Because up until that point, it was pretty much just trying to run away from responsibility, trying to run away from all of the, all of the chores and all of that, or trying to postpone it till later, till I feel better so that I can figure it out and all that. And about that time, shortly after that time, when I got my shit together, when I started getting my shit together, I got literally the most basic job that I could possibly get, just so that I could put together some money, pay the rent, just get my own place. Shortly after that, I discovered Jocko Willink. I'm not sure if you heard of him, but he's literally my absolute role model. So this guy, thanks to Joe Rogan, I found out about Jocko and I started listening to him. And this guy has such a hands-on approach. He has such a straightforward approach towards dealing with whatever your responsibilities, which is just get your shit together and be disciplined as you possibly can. And this is what's helping me in life. This is pretty much the key factor to my road to my resurrection, whatever you want to call it, my road back on, back from the bottom onto wherever I'm headed. So in my case, like I said, discipline, that's what really, really helped me a lot. I have heard some haters talking about, like, oh, Jocko, his techniques, they don't necessarily work for everyone because people would get more depressed if they take on too much responsibility and all that. And I'd say that's just utter bullshit. You really have to accept that would just be another excuse. An excuse is the last thing that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a solution. And so back to maybe the what I wanted to talk about. Why I started talking about this is because I also, when the whole pandemic started, have been on the way up. Okay, so I've had my darkest moments behind me already. I've learned from those experiences. However, as much as I am pretty much I don't know how to put it. I like to spend time on my own a lot, okay, so that I can do whatever I'm interested in, etc. I am a social person, but I'm not extremely sociable, if you will. So so that wasn't really that depressing to me, the fact that I couldn't go out and socialize with people, because I don't really do that a lot anyway. I'm way too busy to do that much. So, you know, in my case, that wasn't the most depressing fact. You know, the most depressing fact was seeing what's going on around, the blindness of people, or maybe the just, you know, the blatant ignorance of people who, like literally, some people's perception just blows my fucking mind. You know, when I think about how could someone interpret what is going on entirely differently. You know, I get it. Maybe, you know, some people would call me a conspiracy theorist and all that. You know, maybe I am going a little bit down the rabbit hole of topics that most people wouldn't want to even touch, you know, with a 10-foot stick or whatever. But I just think that, you know, you have to face whatever is going on rather than trying to turn away from it and see whatever your peers, you know, whatever the crowd will do, because that's the mentality that got us into where we are right now, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think. Yeah, I think you're dead on there. I think that there might be a couple of main reasons why that's happening. One, society sort of runs on trust a little bit, especially societies that run well. And so it's very difficult for someone to question authority without losing trust in the system wholesale. And so there's this sort of like psychological barrier to say, like, the system has to work. Like, there can't be failings of the system, because then everything falls apart, right? So they don't even want to look down that path to some degree. And then I'd also say probably, but it's a mixture of our education system that teaches us to be spoon-fed information. So people, including me to some degree, I've seen myself just sitting around waiting to be spoon-fed something when it's my responsibility to go and explore. And again, this is skills in a process: explore, assess, gather what's valuable, sort of digest it, turn it into something good, and then move forward. Like that is a process you have to develop in yourself that doesn't come automatically. And emotionally, and like your sense of yourself can also influence this, your self-esteem. So like if you don't consider yourself a math person, you're not going to spend 15 minutes trying to figure out a math problem. But if your ego tells you you're a math person and you don't figure out the math problem, you're going to sit there till you figure it out. And I'm speaking from my own experience. I consider myself a math person. So I would literally just sit there until I could figure out a math problem. I sit there for 15 minutes till somehow, some way, it just got to me. I got to the answer, even if I didn't understand it initially. Whereas with English and books and writing, just getting started a little bit on it was just a giant chore. And it's not that it was skills or anything that was really related to why it was such a chore. It was that it was my identity and my sense of my own abilities within that, and the lack of confidence that I was operating with. And it's not even like confidence in any serious sense. It's just like, it's writing, bro. It's just writing. It doesn't, you could just vomit words onto the page and see what happens. It doesn't have to be perfect before you execute it the first time. You could just start getting the reps in and bring your game up gradually, right? Like better to sell, like if you have a sales job, better to make 15 grand selling this year, 30 grand selling next year, and 45 grand the next year, as opposed to take 2 years to study, go into debt, and then start making 45 grand a year. Like, you're better off developing the skills of building it up. And like with social media, I've seen the same thing for me, where like I'm learning slowly how to organically kind of grow my own social media. And so as I once I hit a certain level, then it's going to carry its own momentum and stuff like that. So that's helped. I know I kind of jumped across things there.
No, look, I think you've actually mentioned pretty good topics here. First things first, maths, okay? I am absolutely the other way around, which is quite funny, because for the past 6 or 7 years, I used to work as an accountant, or let's say, you know, in accounting on various different levels. Either way, cut the long story short, I figured out as the time went that it wasn't really for me. You know, I still am doing a little bit of that work every now and then, just so that I can put some money in my pocket. But end of the day, this is definitely not something that I want to focus my future on. So you know,
Not a
why
very like meaningful job. It doesn't, you're not going home
not
every
very
day feeling
fulfilling.
rewarded by your work, so to speak. It's good
That's
work,
it.
it's necessary work, but yeah.
Definitely not fulfilling, definitely didn't give me that kind of satisfaction. Sure, it would pay better than other jobs that I've done, and I've done all kinds of work in the past. I've done physical work, I've done some warehouse gigs, the only things that I haven't done are a driver's job or anything like that, because I don't drive at the moment. But accounting, why did I get into it? And why am I even talking about it? I got into it because I was tired of physical work. I was like, this isn't really for me. I'm not a very physical person. I like to exercise, but that's, outside of work. I like to work with my head if I can. So there were a few options I've done. My very first job ever was in sales. In telemarketing, so cold calling people. I had absolutely zero skill. I was 18 years old. I was totally shit at it. So I was like, oh, this is definitely not the best idea to get back into that. So as I was about 23, 24 years old, I started doing some, basic accounting work, such as processing payments, etc. And I realized one thing, that I am quite good with numbers. I am awful with maths. Okay, so when it comes to like mathematics in school, I was really, really bad at that. I would always get an E or an F or a D at the very, very best. And when it comes to the accounting work, I had to take on a different approach, because I was like, okay, look, I am definitely not going to do the physical work for much longer, because I don't want to do it. I am definitely not going to do sales. What else is there? And this accounting work seems pretty interesting. But for someone who is good with languages, for example, English is my second language. I started speaking English about 10 years ago, like really, really badly. Still, I still have a long way to go, but I would say I'm getting there. So I'm much better with languages than I am with maths. So my approach was to literally try and implement how I learn languages into how I learn mathematics. And the most effective way I found is literally break it down to the point that a 4-year-old would be able to work it out if they only knew the maths. So do it as simply as I possibly could. Don't try and confuse myself. Don't try and make it sound complicated or look complicated, because after all, what the job is about is trying to translate complicated data into something that anyone outside of a finance function would understand. So that's pretty much the job in a nutshell. And in order to do it right, I had to start looking at maths as if it wasn't maths, as if it was just another problem to solve. So how do I solve it? How do I figure it out? And there's always a way to figure it out if you're only willing to do that. So yeah, that's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to say about maths. I forgot what you were saying. Moving forward. I'm sorry.
No. I was just sort of talking about how like, one, if you just work at something, like, you can get better at it, and
Yes,
your like your views and your confidence of surrounding something affect how easily you can do it. Like, if you like for most people, sitting and thinking about a math problem for 15 minutes like just might sound like a giant chore, and I did it willingly because it was fed from my curiosity. Like, I found the right way to sort of to approach it, I guess, and that was because of the narrative I had constructed around math and everything in my own identity. But I wanted to talk about because you had mentioned that. So where are you from originally? What languages do you speak, and how did you come to the U.S.? I'm assuming you're in the U.S.
No.
Or the UK. Sorry, UK.
Yes, I'm in England. I got here 10 years ago, specifically in May. So yeah, it'd be about 10 years now, and just a little bit. I'm originally from Poland. I've spent most of my life there as a kid. When I was 16, my mom took me to Canary Islands for about 10 months, and I was like, that's when I first got a little hint of what it's like to, of what it's like to experience different culture, to what it's like to see happy people out on the streets, because Poland is a dark place, as much as it's a beautiful place to be, to go on holiday or whatever, it's quite a hard place to be, to live there on a daily basis. For the most part, that
is it
all,
a
yes,
somber culture, so to speak? Like
that's what I was just
people
going
are
to say.
not.
People are extremely narrow-minded, and I am not trying to marginalize or anything like that. I'm just saying, the overall mentality of a Catholic person, okay, because that's the majority, of Poland is an hardcore, old school Catholic country, okay, so very intolerant towards diverse cultures, etc. Quite intolerant towards minorities, and that includes gay people and all that. I was just like, I couldn't deal with that shit. I was like, why should I be concerned about someone's sexual preferences if I'm just having a pint with them, or if we're just having some conversation or whatever, or if I just see that person on the street. And I know a lot of people who would say like, oh, you know what, hey, this guy's this and that. I'm not supposed to even talk to him because, we don't do that kind of thing. To me, it was just like all that petty bullshit. I was like, you know what, I cannot put up with that. I lived in Tenerife for 10 months and it was awesome. People were happy on the streets. Literally, when you go to a grocery store, for example, in Poland, even though I lived in a major city, I lived in Krakow, which is the second biggest city in Poland, if you go to a grocery store, most of the people, when you look at them, will look at you as if like, what the fuck are you looking at, dude? Where you got a fucking problem? The sort of attitude that you
Machismo, aggression, disagreeable, like
rather disagreeable and and definitely unpleasant. And I was like, why should I be putting up with this shit? Like, I know that there are places out there where you can just get on with your life, do whatever you want to do. You can hang out with good people. If you come across someone who isn't the right person to be around, then you just move on and continue striving to live as well as you can. Whereas in Poland, it's much more of a struggle rather than striving, so that's what got me to change environment. So I literally got out of there when I was 20. I moved to England, and I was pretty confident that that my English is really good because I watched some movies with subtitles, and I was like, yeah, I can pull it off, I can handle it. So the hard truth hit me immediately once I got here. I got here first over to my mom's. I've stayed at her place for about a week or so. Got myself a job. I remember up until now the embarrassing moment when I first got into a recruitment agency, and I said, I literally walked in and I was like, good morning, I look work, hard worker, anything, and then they were like, obviously they all cracked a little joke and all that, and they politely said to me, look, buddy, we'll call you, which in other words, means get the fuck out of here, we don't want to deal with you and all that. So I was like, okay, this was so embarrassing and this was so uncomfortable and this was such a horrible experience that I don't want to, and I know that I will, moving forward, experience it for probably many years to come, right? But that is something that I want to experience as little as possible. So what am I going to do about it? I'm not going to go to college and learn the language or whatever. So I literally got myself a Netflix subscription. I got myself a Spotify subscription or whatever, the music service at the time. And I started watching movies. For example, American movie with, or like English movie, whatever, with, English subtitles so that I could hear both the pronunciation and see the spelling of the word. And that way, if I didn't understand the word, that I would just pause it, Google it up quickly on my phone. Okay, I know what the word means, so I can give or take, put together a sentence and try and figure out what they're on about, That turned out to be pretty effective because that's how I learned my English for the most part, I would say. People get always confused about the accent. They're like, oh, so which part of the States do you come from? Like South Africa and all that. I heard all sorts. And that is mostly due to the fact that I have learned my English watching movies. And most of the movies, most of my favorite movies are made in USA. So So yeah, so that's how I got there. And yeah, that's it. That's me in a nutshell, you know. Yeah, Poland for 20 years, and then 10 years happily living here. Although my destination point is America. I don't know how long it will take me to get there, but I really hope one day I will.
Yeah, yeah. The yeah, ideally, at some point we'll get our stuff together, and everyone that wants to come here can at the right time. The only thing is, the only limitation, and if we got our economic policies in order, it would sort of remove the limitation. But if you have 10 million jobs, and we have 10 million job openings right now, so like now is sort of a good example of this. But if you have 10 million jobs, and you have 10 million people, and you bring in another million, you now have 1 million unemployed people. But as the jobs keep going up every month, we create 300,000 more. Those are families and lives that can be supported through those means. And what happens is, if it goes too fast and you have too many people too quickly, that is, supply and demand, too much supply of labor. So businesses can fire you and hire someone else for cheaper, or
Which
you
is
lower
a
your
very
wages
bad
and they'll take someone
outcome.
else. But on the opposite side, if you have more jobs and less labor, now businesses have to go to other businesses and try to get you to leave that business and come work for them by paying you more. And so that's sort of the two sides of labor scarcity. And so if we had labor scarcity the right way and all the other policies fixed, which is, it takes a long time to get through all that. I have a 64-minute video on YouTube fixing all economic policies across the board, and it's a lot to get through, but it's a thorough piece. We could get up to probably like 3, 4, 5, 6 million jobs created every year, which would mean 10, 15 million immigrants every year that could come in and be supported. And I'm definitely in favor of all freedom-loving peoples being brought in, because you want as resilient and strong a free United States as possible. So it makes
Very
sense to try to bring the freedom-loving people of the world together. I wanted to say something about Poland. It's interesting because Poland, more than any other country sort of in Europe, is both anti-PC in some ways, like against sort of the rest of the European sort of,
yeah.
left-wing liberal sort of side of it. And they also experienced Nazi Germany, obviously. So they understand freedom, and they also understand sort of the excesses of whatever. But there's a difference between that and having a culture and a philosophy of freedom for your society. And that's the difference between sort of the American approach versus many other approaches, where like we're Christian in many ways and conservative, but
Yes.
open and loving, because it's about freedom and it's about you living your life. And as long as you don't harm anyone else, what is it to me to try to dictate anything about your life? Like you harm someone, you don't pay your taxes, whatever, then we have issues. But beyond that, what is it? Why should the government be involved in those kinds of things? And more importantly, why should I hate you for any of those things? Why should I be hung up on any of those things? So it's anyway, so I'd like to see that kind of culture and philosophy adopted outside of the United States more so than it is. I feel like we attempt to have it as pure as possible, and we don't always get it. But there's lots of other countries that just don't take freedom as seriously. I
But
don't know
look,
why, but they don't.
I live in England, like I said, and here, England is also very PC. And just to clarify things, I
Mm-hmm.
am all about freedom and all that, and I am extremely tolerant. Like I said, I really don't give a shit about your preferences and all that. Do your thing, whatever floats your boat. Whatever makes you happy. Do your thing, as long as you don't get in other people's way. Then literally do whatever. However, I am definitely anti-PC. Okay, I am definitely not on board with all that preposterous woke bullshit, and I think that's what the US gets wrong. So when I say that I would like to live in the US, I would love to. And since I was a little kid, pretty much everything that I remember from my childhood had something to do with the American culture, because it was always on TV, because it was always in the books, it was always everywhere, you know, and that was always the promised land, you know, that was always the place that you wanted to go. And I'm not talking about just the, you know, the big cities and all that, because obviously, for example, what's happening in Los Angeles right now is an absolute catastrophe, you know, with Gavin Newsom in charge. I don't even know where to start with that cunt, but but honestly, the way I see it, the U.S. as a country, with, you know, with all the land, with all the landscape, with everything where you can go, all the places that you can visit, you know, it's a giant continent. It's a giant place. You know, the United States alone are such a monumental place that you could really find whatever you're looking for, I think, you know.
Yeah, Europeans can appreciate this, and you can appreciate this. So most people in you know, society around me probably wouldn't drive more than an hour to go date someone or to go on a date with someone or anything like that. And obviously, you know, from England and everything, a 12-hour drive in a straight direction, that's a long distance, right?
Sure.
Me and my girlfriend were 6 years into a relationship now. When we started out, for the first 14 months, it was long distance. And so, and this sort of ties into the,
how'd you pull that off?
about 50,000 miles or whatever, 75,000 kilometers on my car is, or yeah, 75,000 kilometers on my car is how I did it, about that, in the span of 14 months. Every 3 weeks, so I had a 4 days on, 3 days off schedule. So every 3 weeks or so, I try to go out there. But anyways, I just wanted to tie it to this broader point. I drive from California to Utah, which is where lots of people that are Mormon or in that Latter-day Saints church live in the United States. I'm not a member of that church, but I just so happen to be going there. She just so happened to live there. And I drive 12 hours straight on one freeway, 630 miles straight with a little bit of extra, you know, before and after. And that gets you about 1/6 of the way across the United States. You know, you could go for 72 to 80 to 90 hours straight in a straight line across, and that's how long it would take you to get there without any breaks or gas stops or anything like that. So so I dated someone. Now we grew up near each other within like 30 minutes of each other. So we knew each other from then. So it's not like I plucked her out of obscurity 12 hours away, but we had a relationship 12 hours away in the United States because it was all free, open. There's no borders between all the countries. There's no processing. You just drive, you know?
Awesome.
So yeah, the United States is huge, and I want to explore the United States, and I'm here, you know?
That is
how big it is. It's literally the size of the European Union plus a little extra. You know?
And that's what makes it so great. And really, when you think about why am I talking about why I would like to live there? Obviously, there are pros and cons, and one con that I could think of is the government at the moment. Who's in charge? You know, it's an absolute disaster. Everyone who's got two brain cells that communicate with each other knows that there is an absolute disaster going on right now, and it's not. Of
the people that are paying attention, yes. The problem is not everybody is paying attention.
Sure, but you know. So Biden and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, I don't even know what she's doing there, because really I haven't really seen her much in the media or anything like that. Even though I do follow all of them as much as I possibly can. You know, try and see as much what is going on as I possibly can, because it is not just the U.S. Okay, if it was. No offense to, for example, Azerbaijan, but if it was the government of Azerbaijan or New Guinea or whatever, I don't even know if I pronounced that right. You know, if it's a government of Poland, it doesn't have a global effect. Okay, it doesn't affect the global economy, the politics, and all that. But in case of the United States does something, and then the world follows. Okay, or let's say the United States implements some policy, and then the world, it does affect the world in one way or another. You know, the world will usually follow with their policies, etc. So that's where we have a little bit of a problem, because obviously what is going on right now in Afghanistan and what is going on with the politics, in general, with all the policies that Biden is implementing, it is affecting not just the U.S. but also the countries that are participants in whatever the U.S. has going on. What I think is a good thing, and that's where I was going with this, why I would like to live in the US. For the most part, it comes down to freedom. In England, you are supposedly free. Okay, they say that you get your freedoms here and all that. True, but where are the guns? And I'm not saying that I'm some fucking psychopath who wants to shoot people. I'm just saying, what if I want to carry? What if I want a concealed carry, firearm, so that I can protect myself from criminals? Okay, England has, I think, the biggest in the world problem with knife crimes. I don't know if I get it right, but I know that knife crimes are a giant problem in England. Okay, and I personally know 2 or 3 people who were robbed at a knife point. I am not exaggerating this. I used to hang around quite a well, let's say I used to hang around some people that you'd not necessarily want to hang around back in my day. So I've had my fair share of fuck ups, and I used to hang around people who would often get in trouble. And as much as I think you have to be quite irresponsible to get yourself in a situation where you are being robbed at a knife point. Back in the day, that's what I thought, that only morons get in that kind of situation and all that. No, it is actually not the case. In here, you can just be coming back from a grocery store or whatever, and some asshole will run up to you with a knife or with a fucking machete, and he will just say, "Give me all you got." What are you going to do in that case? You are going to either try and run away, and this might end really badly, or you are going to just give him whatever you got and pray that he's not going to stab you with that knife. Situation would change dramatically if concealed carry was a legal thing in England. In here, you cannot even carry a bloody air rifle or anything like that, air pistol, whatever, pellet gun. You can't even have that. So where's the common sense? This is my problem, that the government that is taking away your guns, the government that has restricted our right, that has taken away our right to defend ourselves in this country, is defending itself with firearms, with armed guards. Okay, when you go to London, where to Downing Street, where Boris Johnson is, our lovely Prime Minister, that cocksucker, where when you go there, that asshole is surrounded by guards who are carrying automatic rifles, right? Whatever you want to call them, machine guns, MP5s. I don't know. I'm no expert,
In Washington D.C. after January 6th, they brought in 24,000, troops with guns and stuff. But obviously,
we're talking military.
You're talking about England, but yeah.
So that's exactly my problem. That people that how can you not see the hypocrisy? Like how could so many people be? How could so many people say that this is actually a good thing that we don't have guns here, because if we had guns, people would just be recklessly shooting each other. No, this is not Grand Theft Auto. I think the best example of the concealed carry or whatever, the right to bear arms actually working is Texas, I think, Alabama, places where you can carry a gun. And everybody's polite, everybody's nice. As far as I know, Austin is one of the best places to be, because everybody's polite. Because, like, how the fuck should I know if this guy that I'm just about to have a face off with or whatever, how do I know that he doesn't carry a gun and he's not gonna point it at my head? So everybody's polite, like, oh hey, hello, okay, I'll get out of your way, you get out of my, okay, I'll get out. No, you first, you go first. And here it's like, get out of my way, asshole, and it's like, but you don't think twice, and then it turns out that the guy has a knife. That's my problem, that's my problem.
So there's like sort of 2 interesting pieces here, because I've been doing some of this research myself lately, because I did a video on the Second Amendment and gun control and all that a long time ago, and I uploaded it recently on my YouTube channel, and I was sort of readdressing the topic. I looked up the first off, I looked up the 7 deadliest cities in the United States, states. So by the 50 states, the 7 deadliest, the 7 safest, the 7 highest with gun control, and the 7 lowest with gun control. And when I looked, there was no correlation between any of it. Like there were high gun control states that were safe, there were low gun control states that were safe, there were dangerous states that were on both sides of it. So like the danger of the society and the gun control were 2 separate sort of things going on. None of it sort of tied into anything else. And this is where you can talk to your fellow UK, England, your fellow Englishmen and fellow UKans or whatever you call them out there. So about 35,000 people a year are killed by firearms in the United States. About 35,000.
35,000.
About 2.5 million people are saved from criminals, but with guns. That's the statistic no one knows about. So about 100 times as many people are saved by guns as are endangered by guns or killed by guns. So,
but of course, the mainstream media is not going to tell you that, right? I'm sorry.
Exactly. That's how you control the narrative. If you only ever ask the question, how dangerous are guns? That's a negative perception. If you ask how many lives do guns save, that's a positive thing. What good is it doing versus what bad? And so if you only talk about the bad, you're going to have a bad. So that is going forward, going to be my sort of argument. 100 times as many people are saved as are harmed by guns. And so they're a net good, obviously. And like you said, in some cases, you stop crime when you have a gun as a citizen. And
Look,
gun control doesn't seem to do anything.
Absolutely not. It not only it doesn't do anything, it makes the situation worse because a criminal will figure out a way to get a hold of a gun. Okay, he will get into possession of one, and in that kind of situation, that only makes things much worse. Just like with war and drugs and everything else, it's like I'm not saying decriminalize fentanyl because that's nobody wants that. What I'm saying is, with guns, if you try and implement gun control, whatever, or let's say an absolute ban on guns, okay? Because I think this is what they're trying to do in the U.S. right now with gun control. That they're trying to they still allow certain people to have a gun, whatever. But a vast majority won't be able to get that. Like, for example, in California, I think, that's probably one of the strictest laws. Like, California probably has some of the strictest laws when it comes to, to the gun.
California, New York.
I don't know about Illinois.
I think Vermont. Yeah.
I don't know how Chicago is doing with that, but I do know
as a city, Chicago is Chicago is one of the top ones for sure for gun control. Yeah, and so here's the thing. Like, to your point about the criminals. If you're poor, let's say you're going to rob someone, you have a gun or whatever. You're going to rob someone because you're poor, right? Well, if you're poor, you don't have food, you don't have somewhere to stay. If you get arrested, you get food, you get somewhere to stay. So like your life's even better if you do the illegal thing. So it's not like they're afraid of being in jail. It's not like they're afraid of doing that. If you're in that kind of a situation where you're willing to, have a gun on someone and do something like that, for sure you're not going to care about buying an illegal firearm or whatever. And to your point, you can still get a knife and still try to kill someone, still try to rob them or whatever. So it's not like you're helping save anyone by taking away this right. And in the long run, with Nazi Germany being the best example, Australia, what's happening right now in Australia being another example, when they take away the guns to some degree, like that means the government can get away with a lot more before the citizens can actually rise up. Better example, Cuba. We don't even talk about Cuba anymore because of Afghanistan and all the stuff. But there were protests and citizens were getting shot down by the government in Cuba because they don't have guns. And the people that are protesting in Cuba are they're only doing that because they're strong enough or courageous enough to say, I might die and it's still worth, libertad, it's still worth, for liberty, it's still worth standing up, even against someone who has a gun when you don't. So,
So that's
so
pretty
it,
much
it,
what's
it
happening.
makes a difference, man. When that day comes, when the shit hits the fan, having guns when you're a citizen makes a big difference.
And I think this is also, you made a good point here. It's like, with protests, okay, people go out on the streets to protest. I think many of them do realize that they might, I'm not talking about Cuba, because Cuba is quite extreme, okay? What's going on there with, police shooting citizens, that's just fucking preposterous to me. But, the way I see it, in London, for example, you go out to a protest, nobody expects that the police will start beating you up with buttons or whatever, that they will start throwing gas at you or anything like that. It happens, okay? And what's happening in Australia is absolutely inexcusable, in my opinion. With the tyranny, with the absolute abuse of emergency given authority, because the powers that the police were given in Australia over the past year and a half are only due to the pandemic, right? So obviously lockdown, yeah. Well, look, I'm never ever.
It's like if you compare the deaths from Delta, the new variant, compared to the old flu, it's the same.
What happened
It's
to the
basically
flu?
just a bad flu now. And so what happened is this is just this is a new flu. So it outcompeted and outspread the other flus.
Where is
still
the
flu
flu?
deaths in some sense, but it's still gone up a little bit.
Why is no one on the planet reporting any flu cases whatsoever? As far as I know, flu has been eradicated. It has been totally obliterated by the COVID.
The best answer to that is because they started getting paid more if they say it's a COVID case than if it's just a regular flu case. And if it doesn't make a big difference in the end, if this does seem like a regular flu and not exactly COVID-19, you could still get that extra $2,000 or whatever you get paid. I don't know what the National Health Service in the UK pays in terms of COVID care versus others, but here in the US, the emergency packages and everything they came out with put a bunch of money out there for that stuff. So I know it's about $2,000 from what I looked at. If a hospital reports it as COVID-19 versus other similar diseases.
I heard that there were some giant differences between, the big difference between what you would get, as in like what a hospital would get for a normal admission versus a COVID admission. And I actually heard about tens of thousands of dollars. So like $10,000 or whatever, or 20, probably not 20, but it was like going upwards of 10. So even $2,000, okay, per patient, per one admission. Imagine imagine what was going on.
If it's 500,000, that's
exactly
whatever, $2 million right there.
So there's so there's one answer to what happened with the flu. Obviously, I'm being a little sarcastic because I have a pretty good idea of what happened to the flu, what happened. Like I don't know how deep you went down the rabbit hole of the whole PCR and all that, and
a little bit, not too deep.
So
but I know that the accuracy of the PCR tests aren't very good compared to other tests, and there's lots of false positives.
For all I know, and the reason why I mentioned it is because the guy who invented the PCR test died of pneumonia, which is quite suspicious in the US, especially. Very, very shortly prior to the outbreak in what was it, November 2019, right?
Yeah, so it was sort of January, February, March where America started waking up to it. But yeah, late November, mid-November 2019 is.
I think that was
so the geneticists or virologists that I looked into looked at the patient zero being around November 2019 of this particular bug.
So there you go. So the guy who invented it very shortly before the outbreak of the whole bug, he died under quite mysterious circumstances, given that he was very strongly advocating against using the PCR test for detection of any viruses or infections, because he said this test is purely not designed for that. And the test is done in the way that, again, I'm no rocket scientist. If I start talking science, then I'm gonna sound like a fucking idiot. So give me a little break here. But I'm just gonna tell you, from the top of my head how I remember it. So as far as I remember it, you can tune or whatever, like amplify whatever the test, so that whatever it detects, whatever you're looking for, okay, whatever you set it to detect, if it detects a tiniest particle, or let's say like a fraction of what you're looking for, that would the amount that is absolutely insignificant. Let's say you have some 1 or 2 flu particles in your lungs that would never ever make you ill, because your immune system doesn't even recognize it as a threat. It's just those 2 are just flying around there. The PCR test spots one of them, and then it starts multiplying that result up until the point where it reaches whatever your target is, where you set it, like, okay, let's set it here. It starts multiplying it till it reaches that point, and then you get a positive result. So you make whatever you want out of that. It's just,
I think the best, it's not even a metaphor, because this is kind of literally what they're doing. But basically, what the difference is a petri dish. If you have a petri dish, you put something in it and you wait a week, it'll grow to a certain size, and then you could detect stuff. If you wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, well, then it's grown a whole bunch more. Then you can detect more of the smaller initial bits. So that's kind of my understanding of how they can manipulate the PCR test and how accurate it is or how sensitive it is, by just allowing more cycles of this sort of stuff in order to see if there's anything in there.
And that's that's the main issue that I had from the day one with this, because I remember very, very early, it was probably March or April. I'll get there in a second. Let me just say something so that I can get there, so that what I'm saying makes a little more sense. Okay, so when I started doing my podcast, I was literally pissing out of my ass. Okay, I just started doing it because I was like, I'm just frustrated with the shit that's going on. It was prior to the pandemic. I wanted to do it for a while, and I was still doing my office, 9 to 5 job, on a daily basis. I just started recording on my phone. I was doing it at home, just talking to myself. Like I was like, okay, let's make it my little self therapy, okay, like my little personal shrink sessions with myself. So I started doing that. Then the when the whole situation with COVID started happening in March, when they started imposing the first lockdowns and all that, I started looking into it, because I was like, okay, this is frustrating. The fact that there is something going on, I don't understand it. So it pretty much qualifies to my podcast. Okay, if it is frustrating to me because I don't understand what's going on, then I'm gonna try and break it down to pieces. I'm gonna try and analyze it. This is what I learned from from people smarter than I to do, in case I'm confused, in case I'm stuck in a moment, in a situation, whatever, and I don't know how to deal with it. I need to try and work it out from just break it down to pieces and work it out from the ground up, if you will. So I got to the point of analyzing whatever the PCR means, and I have come across that interview where Kary Mullis, the guy who invented the PCR tests, was talking about it. And it was a few years ago. I don't know if the interview was from like 10 years ago or so, whatever. But I know that it was nothing new. It was nothing fresh, and the guy was already. I think that was going back to one of the previous viruses, the SARS 1 or whatever, maybe Ebola, something. I totally don't. I don't want to butcher it further, but I don't remember which virus it was. I just remember that the guy was saying back then, he said, this PCR test, it is not designed to detect viruses. Please do not use it for that, because if you will use it for that, then you will get a false result, because the test will show as positive, but it's not going to mean that it is positive, because it just spotted something and it just multiplied it, whatever, you know. And they did it regardless. And how is it that the guy disappears off the surface of the planet 2 months, very, very conveniently, 2 months prior to the, you know, outbreak? So all that to me, and again, this is going a little down the conspiracy theory area, but you know, but call me whatever you want. Like this has been bothering me for the past year and a half, and right now, where we are, you know, the place we're at, I think we have a long way to go. The damage has been catastrophic, you know, in terms of what happened to the businesses, small businesses. I have friends who will never recover from that in terms of whatever happened to their businesses. They have to go back to working for somebody else, where they had their own self-employment going on, and you know, they were pretty well off. All of a sudden they have to go back and work at a grocery store, and you know, and obviously no offense to anyone who works at a grocery store, but I have a friend who literally,
but for those people, it's a step back.
It's a giant step back. You know, when I know a guy who was a couple of years older than I am, and he had his own little business going on. All of a sudden he has to go back to working at a grocery store, and they get rid of him 2 weeks later, and he's like, so shit, so now I don't have any job at all, now I have to go to a warehouse and whatever. And it's like, you are literally, you know, you were doing pretty well, but you were still, you know, at an early stage, or let's say whatever, you know, so quite overdrawn, quite in debt, you know, with the bank, with a business loan, whatever. But everything was going well as long as it was going, because you were able to pay your, you know, installments, whatever. You were able to pay for your car, you were able to pay your bills, and the money was coming in. And all of a sudden you have to shut down, because if you don't, they will arrest you. And all of a sudden, all of the orders go, you know, 300-400% down. So you are unable to pay your bills, and all of a sudden you have to close. And not everyone got the, you know, government's incentive to help and all that. I get pretty fucked over myself when I was when the whole lockdown started, because I was still working for a local government, actually, as an accountant, and I was a contractor there, so I wasn't self-employed. I was employed by the recruitment agency, whatever, that, you know, that got me the job, that they had a contract with the council for which I was working. But cut the long story short, the day of the outbreak, the council decided that they're going to cut all of us off, all of the contractors, because, you know, we cost them a lot more money than a normal employee would, because we only do a, you know, short-term temporary project work, whatever. So they were like, okay, this is a giant expense for us, so let's just cut it totally. So they totally cut us off, and from working for a local government where I thought, you know, this is pretty solid, you know, this is a pretty stable job, I'm pretty good, even though I'm just a contractor, no way on earth that anything could happen, that they would all of a sudden not need me for the job because they need someone to do the job. All of a sudden, turns out that the people working for the local government, the contractors, were the first to go with absolutely zero support. So we had something like furlough scheme here, which is like, you would, if you were working for a business for longer than 3 months at the time of the pandemic, then you would qualify for furlough, which is 80% of what you were making. You would get that paid by the government. So you do sacrifice a little bit, but you still get 80%, and you stay at home until they figure the shit out, you know, until they, whatever they got to do with the pandemic, until they get you back to work.
Until they say it's over.
Yeah, until they say it's over. That's a good one. But yeah, let's say, you know, till they tell you to go back to work, you are paid by the government. You get 80% of your wages or your salary, whatever. So you're pretty good, you know. So I was like, okay, I can live with that, you know. It's a little less money, but I can handle. I can, you know, manage. I can pay my bills. I'm gonna be all right. All of a sudden turned out that the council is not willing to pay for that because the government said, well, council is the government, it's the local government, right? So it has the funding. If it is willing to provide that funding for its contractors, then you're all good. But if not, then that's down to the council. And the council said, no, we're cutting the costs. This is why we got rid of you. We're not paying you anything. Fuck off. Like, you're on your own. So that's when I started, like, that's when I started doing a lot more self-employed work. I was like, I was left on my own, with some laughable benefit, whatever they give you here, like unemployment benefit, whatever. So I was like, okay, I have to take matters in my own hands now. I'm not going to do the corporate work anymore. I am definitely not doing that because there is no stability there. So I might as well, if I'm sailing out in the deep waters, I might as well do my own thing, do my podcast, do whatever I got to do, but don't go back there. I don't know why I started talking about this whole thing, but this is where we
No,
got.
you're good. Yeah. You were sort of going off of just a lot of people financially struggling during this whole thing, but
yes. So I had my fair share of struggle also, and I have to say, it has been quite challenging. Okay, I wouldn't say necessarily very difficult. I had support of some really good friends and all that. So I'm doing all right. I know a lot of people who are doing much worse just because they didn't have an opportunity, to do whatever they had to do, or because they had to waste their time doing some meaningless fucking job for God knows how long just to survive. Where back before this whole madness, they were doing really, really well. All of a sudden, they're stuck in the, between a rock and a hard place. It's like, you quit this shit job. You are totally.
Instagram's going to cut out in a few seconds, so we'll have to end it here. Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Farmer. This is the Uncommon Conversations podcast, part 2 of episode 19. I know I'm kind of all over the place. Okay, we're back. Cool. So, Mike will be back on shortly. There he is. All right, cool.
Right.
All right, cool. We're back. So you were just talking about how, you as well as lots of other people you've seen, have struggled during this pandemic. There's a whole philosophy, and another time I'll get deep into the story about how I discovered this, but there's a philosophy called Anarcho-Syndicalism, which is a fancy way of saying the world operates based off of money. And I think people do things for many different reasons, not just money. So to say the entire world just operates for money is missing the point. Parts of the world just operate for money. And I think most of sort of why this whole pandemic has happened, why China is sort of being propped up by international business people, and why many international business people want the United States to sort of be on the downfall, is because they can make more money doing it. So in some sense, money is just figuring out how much labor is worth, really. It's not so much figuring out how much stuff is worth, because dirt and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't mean anything. But if wages are really low and a bunch of people will work for a rich person for less money compared to what they have, that rich person has leverage over other human beings and has cheaper, human life is cheaper pretty much. So there's sort of two parts of this. One, an example of why they're just making money with this. If they cared about vaccinating people and the immunity anywhere in the world, they would test people for whether or not they've already had the disease, right? If you already have immunity, why would we give you a vaccine? It's a waste of a vaccine unless it's about customers and it's about money. They didn't test anyone to see if you already had COVID. They just want you to get it anyways because it means more money for the businesses playing this whole game in the background.
Why is it? I'm sorry that I'm going to pause you for just 1 second, Jordan, but you're really on point here with one thing that I wanted to talk about. But just for a second, what is it with the booster shots every 3 or 4 months now? Like, I don't know if you heard about it, but Fauci,
Yeah.
that
So
cocksucker, he now wants people to get vaccinated every 3, 4, 5 months, just continuous boosters to, you know, for the rest of eternity or whatever, right?
yeah.
I
So
don't know.
I think there's 3 explanations, and one of them is true, or maybe
I
multiple
think
of them
there
are
is,
true.
but you
One
see,
is the money thing,
yeah,
obviously. One is the money
exactly.
thing.
This
They
is
just
why
want
I
to keep
started talking
selling
about,
you and keep going that.
right.
That's an obvious one. If the shots are just the shots, if they're really just vaccines, then they're not anything else that they're trying to put into people's bodies, then their theory is that it wears off over time. If it is something other than the vaccines that they're putting into people, my theory is it wears off after time. Whatever it is that it's doing, or whatever it is that it's putting into people's bodies, after 3, 4, 5 months, we expel it, or if it's a nanobot in nature, then
Do
it's,
you,
gonna die off and lose signal or whatever it may be. And so they need to have those follow-ups. They also have it's now daily pills, 2 pills a day you take to try to prevent COVID beforehand. That's what
well,
they're
you know, like, I know
that's
that with
Pfizer.
Pfizer.
Pfizer just came out with that recently, started talking about how they're working on a 2 pill a day solution. So
This
it's
is
all about
hilarious.
feeding
This
you
just,
more and more. And also there is an idea or a philosophy or sort of a school of evil people that believe that unproductive, meaning poor people, are worthless by definition. This is sort of in tune with that Anarcho-Syndicalism, where
so,
the only
yeah.
real value is money, and the way the world works is money. If you're not generating revenue, you're a useless human being in some people's worldview. And on top of that, we have false narratives about overpopulation. We don't have too many people. We just
Of course not.
don't have people doing the right things to take care of themselves. This is the big thing.
You
Humans
know
can
what we
take
have
care
too
of
many?
ourselves.
You know what we
So
have
the
too
only
many of? We have too many of procrastinating people. We have too many
yeah.
people who don't do anything, okay? And I'm not talking, look, I'm not talking about like whether someone's a hillbilly or whether someone's upset. I don't give a shit. Like, you know, really, like, I'm a total meathead. So, you know, I don't come from a,
You're not it's not a class thing you're talking about. It's an
absolutely
effort
not.
thing.
It's about just doing something, just do something, do whatever, do something. And I think this is the problem. There's too many people who don't do anything because procrastination is these days a thing. Like, you know, you are being incentivized to eat shit, like to eat absolute garbage, in terms of, you know, like we'll get there later.
Yeah.
But that's one thing. But another thing is, you know, like people aren't really incentivized to be active. And I'm not saying I'm not saying go out there and be a bodybuilder. I'm nothing of the sort. Okay, I'm just saying, you know, do something. Like go and take a walk, whatever. Just do something physical
Move, be
and try
active,
and
stay alive.
absolutely, and try and do something meaningful. Like try and do whatever makes you feel good. Okay, if you feel like drawing, start drawing. If you feel like writing, just try and write something. I'm not saying write a fucking book, because that's a hard thing. I've been trying for quite a few years now, and I don't think it's going as well as I wish it did. But you know, it's just procrastination. There is absolutely not too many people out in the world. We are, I believe, some kind of a parasite of this world. When you think of all the animals, we are definitely the worst kind of an animal there is. When it comes to, you know, all other animals, you know, we're the only ones who couldn't adapt to nature. We have to adjust everything around us. Okay, that's how we, you know,
I sort of understand where you're coming from, but I do think that's a dangerous mentality overall. But I'll let you
sure,
finish your
but
point.
this is why I'm trying. I'm trying to be careful with what I'm saying here. But what I'm saying is, there's absolutely no argument to support the claim that there's too many people out in the world. Maybe there are places in the world that are too densely populated, that's for sure. There are definitely places in the world where people are just living in a beehive. Okay, they're just, you know, way too overcrowded, and to me that's a little wild too. I live in a city right now,
Especially because
and
we can build up, like we can build vertically, so we should never run out of land. It shouldn't be
sure,
that issue shouldn't be a thing. We could just keep going up, you know.
absolutely shouldn't be a thing, and it's not a thing, and it's the whole narrative is just, to me, okay, again, this is just a, excuse me, this is just a personal point of view of a, you know, of someone who doesn't know much about anything. I'm just, you know, I just have my
You're just a
biased
guy.
opinions and all that. So you know, so I'm just gonna, I'll just tell you what I know. But what I know is that the narrative of overpopulation and the narrative of global warming, narrative of climate change, all of those things are motivated by one thing. It all comes down to money. If you don't know what things all about, then follow the money and you will always find it there. It's like you know, that's the issue that I'm having with this, that there is no overpopulation. It's all about the money.
I feel like people pretty much either are operating for good or for money, or they're sick and they're evil, and so they're
power,
or for evil,
there are
for
sick
bad and for
fucking
power.
people out there, yeah, sure. But sorry, I paused you. You were talking about that. I don't know if you remember what you were saying. But yeah, go ahead. I was just saying. Go on.
Go ahead.
Okay, so look, this is my problem here that I was talking at the very beginning about misinterpreting what you hear. Okay, whatever, like misinterpreting the information. So it blows my mind that some people look at whatever's going on right now. Okay, they watch the news, whatever. It also comes down to which channel you're watching. I have noticed that there's definitely a big impact of that. If you don't put too much thought into what you're watching, then you can be easily influenced by either Rachel Maddow or I mean, nobody listens to
John
her anymore,
Hannity,
but, you know,
whoever.
yeah, this is the thing. So you know, I actually, my favorite is definitely Fox News, but you also have to take everything with a grain of salt, and you also have to take.
I like Fox Business the most. They're like the most balanced to me because they're business people. They're not concerned with like they know what they know. So the business stuff they talk about like business, and then the stuff that isn't business, they're like, what is going on here? Like that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So I like it.
So that's you know, so that's how I feel. All of those things are propaganda tools for certain establishments, whatever, for certain, you know, big businesses and all that. Someone is always invested in that. You know, you can always try and.
Well, it's often, in some cases, the same people own all of them.
Very much so, yes.
So,
I do know that. That there are quite a few, for example, left-wing outlets there that are owned by one person, and that one person is heavily invested with other people who have all of those so-called woke or leftist agendas.
Like Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, and he has his own. So it's interesting. So that I don't believe so. So I believe that the media establishment works it's not left versus right. It's the establishment versus those who are challenging the establishment. And so left-wingers right now across Europe and across the United States are kind of the useful idiots for the establishment, because the Biden just has to say, here's what I mean. Like Biden just has to say, we need to have fair and equitable, inclusive programs that don't marginalize anyone. And, you know, he just has to say all that stuff and then do whatever he wants. And a bunch of people are like, yes, I understand. Whereas the right wingers are challenging what's happening. They're like, no, the government's messing up. What's going on? So I think because the left wing doesn't challenge the establishment as much as the right wing does right at this moment, because it changes. The powers that be are anti-right, but only for that reason. It's not that they're actually left, because what we're seeing now, once Trump was out, Now they're starting to hold Biden accountable, talk about the lab leak theory. Like, they're letting the left wing think about stuff now because they got their guy out and they got the other guy out. They got their guy in. So now they can kind of get it back to seeming normal. Whereas before it was all propaganda nonstop, because the establishment was being challenged like more than it ever has been before. Hopefully not more than it will be, but definitely more than it ever was. Like, no one has done what Donald Trump did. And like, that should show you, that should show me, that should show everyone what the power of one person is, like what one person can do.
Look, to me, honestly, I did say it before on my podcast, and I will say it as many times as I have to someone finally agrees with me, because so far not many people have. But I honestly think that, and let's not go too deep down the topic of presidents tonight, but I honestly think that Donald Trump has been the best president since Abraham Lincoln. Honestly, you know, like he has done, if not as much, if not more, at least as much for the United States and for the countries that, you know, are allies of the United States. Not a big fan of the word ally these days because it's being abused by the BLM, you know, and Antifa and all those lunatics. But no, that's the truth, really. Donald Trump has done a lot for the people. Donald Trump actually is calling the woke out on their bullshit. You know, he of all the people, you can count on him that he's definitely gonna say what's on his mind. You know, he will always tell you what's on his mind, and he's gonna say it to the whole fucking world.
Even if he's wrong.
Tweet it, okay? They're gonna be like, yo, Mr. President, hold on a second here. It's gonna be like, you were saying what? And it's, you know, and the tweet's gone, and then the CNN's got something to talk about, and MSNBC's got something to talk about, you know, and the Fox News have a topic to discuss with the president once they get him on, and you know, it was straightforward. It was like people had a problem with that because it was like it wasn't presidential. But what the fuck's going on right now is embarrassing.
So here's saying presidential is like saying professional, or it's like saying an anchor person. Like, that is fake.
No, it wasn't PC.
Like, people need to understand that's fake.
It wasn't fake. Exactly. This is the sort of problem. Look, I've worked for some big corporations back in my day. Not for a long time because I could never put up with that shit too much. But I had a few experiences at a few big places where there's this corporate culture, okay, where you have to, you know, behave a certain way. I worked at a place where you had to wear a tie. Like, there was the dress code. You couldn't just wear a fucking shirt, okay, and a suit. No, you had to wear a tie. Okay, so I was like, okay, this is a little fucking crazy, because I was just, you know, I was just in accounts payable, paying invoices. I was like, okay, but whatever. If that was the thing, maybe they had their, you know, reasons for that kind of culture. It just turned out that it was quite old school, you know, the whole management and all, and they were like, they all worked there for 30 years or so, and it was just an old school kind of culture.
I gotta be honest, part of me respects and understands.
Look, I love the uniform.
Like the high expectations, like you look your best, you kick ass, you look like $1 million every day. Like, I can get that. I don't like it. I don't do it. Look at me, I'm t-shirt. You know, this is how I.
Now,
this is how I'm in shorts. This is how I do it.
So. I'm really not. You know, I'm really not. I'm really not about appearance here. You know, because I don't give a fuck. Okay. And I didn't give a fuck back then. I was like, okay, if you want me to wear a suit, fine, I'll wear a suit. I'll get the best I can, and I'll try to look as fuckable as I can. You know, just you know, try and do my best.
That's funny.
That's what Bill Burr said. So I stole that from him. I stole it from Bill Burr, people. My favorite comedian. But yeah. Anyway, look, I respect the culture, but on the other hand, dress code is one thing. And if we have a dress code, then what I don't like is a fucking dress down Fridays. Listen, either we wear a fucking suit or we don't. Like, don't tell me that I can wear jeans on a Friday, because what the fuck? Like, it's just ridiculous, okay? So we have a dress code or we don't. That's my personal opinion. I personally say, try and look your best because you're at work. but if you feel the most comfortable in a fucking t-shirt with Metallica logo on, wear that, dude, because I really want you to feel as comfortable at work as you possibly can. As possibly as I can accommodate you, as you know, as comfortably as I can do that, I'm gonna do that so that you can focus on getting the job done rather than fucking trying to tie your tie up. Like, give me a break, literally. I don't give a shit about your appearance. I don't give a shit about your attire.
I'm a big believer in performance being the only metric that
Performance,
matters.
that's all I care
That's all that
about.
matters.
All I care about is results. Look, I don't even have to like you, okay? We have to, we can be entirely different in terms of character, okay? We can stand for entirely different things. If you can deliver on the job, if I can see the results, if I can see that we can work together, if I can see that we can have a, you know, a civilized conversation without getting in each other's way, like, okay, I wouldn't probably hang out with you, whatever your name is, you know, if we were after work, you know, whatever, if I met you at the club, it would just be probably, hey, how you doing? And I would probably go my own way. But that doesn't change the fact that I can see that you can get the job done. So how about you just get the job done? I pay you and everybody's happy, or the other way around, right? Like, I do the job for you, you pay me, whatever. I think there's always a way to work things out. You know, before you start getting emotional about something, before you start getting personal about something, like a relationship with someone at work, before you do that, take a breath and just take a moment, take a step back. Rather than do that, rather than get into the emotional mode, rather than get into the personal mode, just focus on get the fucking job done. You're here to get the job done. Don't waste your time on getting emotional and all that, because that will get you in the mode where you will probably not end up making the best decisions. You'll probably end up making the kind of decisions that you will then have to work on fixing and all that, the consequences of and all that. So the way I see it is, if you're there to get the job done and that's all it really is, then just do that. You know, suck it up and do it. Just do it, and don't try and get personal about something, because you will have disagreements with people. People are fucking different. Everybody's different, right? But you know, either you're there, you know, with all your transparency, and you say to people, hey, listen, this is how I feel, you know, this is, you know, like, this hurts my feelings, this triggered me, and this and all that. Or you just get the job done, you know, and then you go home, and then at home you can talk to your cat, do whatever you gotta do, you know. That's it. Just efficiency, you know.
So we wanted to get into, or I wanted to get into, for sure, once you mentioned it, the fake meat, impossible meat versus real food issue.
Yeah, sure.
So what is, first off, what is your, you know, your quick take? Break it down for us.
Very quick take on that. Fuck Bill Gates and his impossible fucking burger and Beyond Meat and all that. Because Bill Gates is behind all that shit. I don't know if you know that, but he's extremely heavily invested in that. So Bill Gates does own the Beyond Meat Impossible Burger. Bill Gates also owns the most farmland in the whole of the US. When we're talking about industrial farmland, I don't know if you know that. But yeah, Bill Gates is officially the owner of the most farmland in the United States, of all people. So that should, you know, at least make you think for a moment about, you know, the whole thing. Yeah. So my take on that, it is not proven to be healthy. It is proven to be quite the opposite so far, at least. I hope he gets it right, because it is rather unlikely that all of a sudden Bill Gates and people like him will disappear off the surface of the planet, right? So rather than trying to, you know, to fight with the guy, try and figure out a way how to work around it. You know, let him do his fucking thing. Let him poison as many people as he wishes with his impossible burger. You try and convince as many people as you possibly can to go and eat animal-based diet. This is my take on that. Like, I personally have been trying to do the carnivore diet for the past year and a half, especially since the pandemic started, you know, since I am pretty much working from home. 100% of my work is now being done from home, where back before the pandemic it was about 20-30%. So now, you know, I work exclusively from here. So I had more time to actually start cooking and start eating right, rather than, you know, going for the usual, what I used to feed myself on. What I used to feed myself on. What I used to eat. Sorry. What I used to eat back in the day: burgers, Domino's, fast food, you know, whatever, Five Guys, hot dogs, whatever, you name it, you know, kebab, just fast food every single day. And I always felt fatigued halfway throughout the day. Literally, I would get up at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., go to work by 9, 10 a.m. You know, I'd have my usual pastries, whatever, some, you know, some Danish, whatever, with my tea or you know, or coffee back in the day. And, you know, I always, about 2 or 3 hours later, I would get this, like I would get really tired. I would get really tired for about 2 or 3 hours, and I could never figure out what is going on. And what was really going on is I had sugar crash every single day. I had a sugar crash for years, you know, and I didn't even know that there was such a thing. And then I would go home. I would at work, I would be at about probably 70% of what I could do, like 70% of my performance, you know. So, you know, so then, and I never thought about it either. I was like, oh, I could probably be doing better, but I don't know what's going on. Then I would go home and I would eat a pizza for dinner, or, you know, the best case scenario, sushi or something like that. That actually is pretty good for you. But,
Yeah.
but you know, but very rarely I would eat steak or anything like that. Or, you know, my usual would be pizza or a burger. And I never thought about it. But when I started listening to Paul Saladino, Dr. Paul Saladino, he's a guy who was on Joe Rogan's podcast once. And I recommend that podcast to everyone, literally. Give me just 1 second. I recommend that podcast to everyone who wants to learn about the carnivore diet. Because I am definitely, like you can already tell by now, definitely not a scientist. From my own experience, I can tell you one thing. Carnivore diet has done wonders for me, okay? I had always, like I said, I had always been tired halfway throughout the day, okay? There was not a day, unless I haven't eaten anything in the morning, like I haven't eaten any of those fucking poisonous pastries or anything like that, or a donut. You know, Krispy Kreme was literally 2 minutes away from my office. So the 2 or 3 times a week I would go and I would get like 2 or 3 peanut butter Krispy Kremes, like with the Reese's peanut butter, and like the most amazing thing on the planet, you know, and always makes you feel like shit later. So you know, so I stopped all of that nonsense. Okay, I was like, the Paul Saladino said that on Joe Rogan's podcast. He said, cut off all that bullshit, cut off all the refined sugar, all the sugar, all of the carbs, so all the pasta, all of the white bread, even the whole grain bread, whatever, all of that, all of the grains, cut all that shit out. What to eat? Like, okay, there are some hardcore carnivore people who only eat red meat, you know, and that's it. Red meat and red meat and red meat, and that's it. Okay, I say you don't have to go that extreme, but I would say eat as much meat as possible. You can eat different animals. You don't have to eat just beef, you know, or lamb, whatever. You can eat poultry, you can eat pork, whatever, but my preference, like my favorite thing, is red meat. So that's what I've been eating for the past year and a half, and I don't have to eat as much. I eat about half, maybe 2/3 of what I used to eat. In terms of calories, I rarely go over 2,000 a day, and I definitely have been feeling much better in terms of like energy. You know, I can eat one meal. I do intermittent fasting as much as I possibly can, not too much, but I do usually anywhere between 5 a.m. when I wake up, or 6 a.m. when I wake up, till about 4 p.m. Let's say around 4 p.m. I will eat my first meal, and I would just eat red meat. For example, I would eat a steak, like a big steak, you know, so that I can make up for all these hours that I've been torturing myself not eating. Then all of a sudden, the intermittent fasting few months in is literally no struggle. I don't get the cravings in the morning to eat anything, you know, and if I do get the cravings, then I'm gonna eat meat. And and that's really that's what I have to say about the Impossible Burger. No Impossible Burger, no vegan diet, no tofu, no nothing like that will ever make you feel as good as a ribeye, okay, or I don't know, like short ribs, or like you don't have to spend a fortune. This is another thing that people think, like, oh, you know, eating a steak every day, you must be so fucking like you like. No, you don't have to spend a lot of money to eat really healthy, and it doesn't have to be a chore that you have to be looking forward to some cheat days. This is another thing that this guy was just saying on his Instagram very recently. I think yesterday, Paul Saladino recorded a video on Instagram where he talked about cheat days, how he's not a fan of those. And I personally cheat a lot on my diet, because every now and then I will still call Five Guys, you know, or get something like that, because I just love it. And I only weigh 65 kilos, so it's like 143 pounds or whatever. So not a lot. So, you know,
is that your so what is your body weight been throughout your life as an adult? What have you sort of gone up and down through?
So the most,
that's pretty lean, 143 or yeah. What'd you say?
Yeah,
was it 65 kilos?
65 kilos, yeah. So let's say, and I'm gonna say it in kilos because I just don't know in pounds like otherwise.
Yeah, it's 2.2. Just multiply by 2.2.
Okay, so I got my, hold on, we got my, let me just put this here for a second. So I'm gonna tell you 2.2. So I used to weigh anywhere between 132 and 150. Okay, 148. So 130 to 148. So yeah, so not a lot, but the case,
but still, like, that's like well, you got to understand, that's like a 15% body weight spread. So I weigh about 295 pounds right now. So the equivalent for me is about 45, 50 pounds. So it might not sound a lot, you know, in general, but that's just because your lower percentage is lower weight. But for me, that would be, you know, 40 pounds, 45 pounds. So that's a big spread, you know.
Quite, yeah. And you know, and the thing is, in my case, I just wasn't taking care of myself. So I started working out about, like, I was working out when I was about 16, because I lived in Tenerife, and you know, there were girls on the beach and all that. So I was like, I am definitely working out.
You're gonna get your muscle in.
That's it. But you know, I looked better when I was 17 than I looked throughout my 20s up until about 28 years old, when I started working out about 2 years ago. So about 2 years ago, I started working out.
Same with me.
So
16, 17 was my peak.
But you see, I always looked absolutely laughable throughout my 20s, because I literally looked like a teenager. Okay, like I had not too much of a muscle, like very little muscle actually, and I had just a tiny little belly always. So that was always quite like embarrassing to me. But I never really did anything about it. You know, I had no chest, whatsoever. I just looked funny. About 2 years ago, I started working out and I started eating healthier. And about a year and a half ago, I started eating mostly meat. And now I have about, I don't know, 9-10% body fat. The last time I checked, I had like 9%. On one of those machines. I don't know how accurate that is, but you know, it just tells me that I'm, you know, that it's not that bad.
Is it one of those things where you like do the pinching?
No, it's just one
or
of
was
those
it where you
things,
go into it?
It's one of those things that you just stand on it, and it's supposed to do some scanning or whatever. It's supposed to tell you that. So
Okay,
that's why I'm saying, like,
those
I'm
are
really
pretty accurate.
questioning the science on that.
Those are pretty. They used to do it where they'd grab you and they'd like pinch, and then
Okay,
depending on how much was there, that would kind of how that and those
that's
that's
what my
so
mate told
inaccurate.
me.
It's crazy. So yeah,
So
yours
yeah,
is
but
pretty accurate.
yeah, look, I feel much better. Okay, I feel much better. I look much better because I look actually. I now look. I think more like a man than than like a teenager. So that, you know, that is definitely a lot better for my self-esteem. I've always been lacking that quite a lot when I was younger. You know, I never really had confidence or anything like that. Those, you know, those really key things that you need in order to socialize with people properly, you know, to interact with people, and having always wanted to do something in entertainment, such as podcast or something like that, I knew that I had to do something about it. So how do you build your confidence? First things first, I think you need to obviously face your demons, whatever is, you know, whatever you're struggling with. I had some struggles myself, so work on that. And second of all, try and do something about those things that, you know, that you have a problem with. So not necessarily, I'm talking like demons. I'm talking about addictions, for example. You know, I had like, I was always quite prone to all sorts of substances when it comes to partying, you know, and right now I am staying as far from it as I possibly can, because I knew that that was literally one of those things that I had to give up on, and I knew that it wasn't doing me any good, and it was just like one of those things like, listen, this isn't doing me any good. I'm fucking quitting it right now, and I'm not going back to it. I'm done, you know. And so no regrets there, you know, and no regrets that I've done it either. I have some, you know, experiences, and I've learned my lesson. That's literally all it is. There was no point, you know, going through it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You got to move on. But second
Yep.
thing is working on those, you know, on those personal problems that, you know, that everyone has. So in some people's cases, confidence. In some people's cases, it's self-esteem. In some people's cases, it's depression or whatever. You know, like people are dealing with all sorts of horrible things.
Some people have a hard time speaking. Some people have a hard time showing up. Some people have a hard time staying organized. We all have our struggles,
yeah.
for sure.
So in my case, it was definitely about how I looked when I looked at myself in the mirror. I was like, dude, this is not good. You know, you have to fucking do something about it, and you have to do something about it real quick.
I
This
could
is
just
like,
imagine you sitting there and just being like, "This is not good."
no, and that's literally what it was, you know. And I smoke a lot of weed, so I get like really paranoid at times, and that's what happened, you know. I was like, I got really freaked out. I was like, no, this isn't me. This isn't supposed to be me. This is me right now, but this isn't supposed to be me. This is not how I, you know, I'm imagined myself at this age. So I'm making a move. I'm doing something. So I started working out, and I started working out just at home. You know, I got myself a kettlebell, and I got some supplements, like some really good supplements, and I just started investing time in it, you know, knowing that I have no excuse to not do that. Especially that, you know, we got a pandemic, whatever, you know, I'm not working. I got all the time in the world to do my thing. So I've decided to make working out and, you know, doing my podcast and writing my thing. So that's what I've been doing. And there's no excuse not to do that. You know, I don't have to see the best results, but I have to be doing it consistently. And as long as I do it consistently, then it's going to work, you know. And the same goes for diet. The same goes for diet. You cannot fuck around with that. You have to, if you decide to do something, you have to commit to it. And that's, you know, when you really think about it, all of that comes down to discipline. And that's one thing that I learned from Jocko Willing. So shout out Jocko, if you by any chance ever listen to this. Thanks for changing my life, dude. Because without discipline, you know, my life was an absolute disaster for a very, very long time. now, you know, it's an entirely different thing just because I have discipline. And, you know, and thanks to that, I can work on other things, which step by step, slowly, you know, are improving how I overly feel about myself. And you know, if you don't have discipline in your life, if you how are you going to stick to your carnivore diet? How are you going to stick to doing whatever you want to do? How are you going to stick to exercising or working on your issues, you know, whatever your issues are? There is no chance in the world that you are ever going to do that if you have no discipline. So really, to start doing anything, you have to work on that. And how difficult is it? It's really not that difficult. You know, it's really not that difficult to get out of bed in the morning and just say, listen, I am not sleeping in. I'm getting up. I'm getting up right now, and I'm gonna do it. Whatever it is I gotta do, I'm gonna do it.
It's interesting because it's all of the actual work, like if you need to better your life and go get a job, actually filling out the application, actually turning it in and doing all that stuff, it's relatively simple stuff, but mentally and for whatever reasons, people have hangups and have things that are keeping them from just pulling the trigger, and you have to work on pulling the trigger. And I like that you talk so much about the carnivore diet and how important it is and everything.
Changed my life. It absolutely changed my life, dude. I recommend it to everyone. And look, sorry, one thing that I really forgot about. Prepare for some movements, like some serious movement, and you know, and whatever your system. If you go for the carnivore diet, you better work from home. That's what I'm saying, okay? Or you better.
For sure. For sure, your toilet is gonna be your best friend. Yep.
That's it, and it's quite serious. Like I had a really bad diarrhea for like 2 weeks before my body actually was like, okay, dude, I think we're good now. Like I know that this is the way it's gonna go from now. And I'm not saying just.
I wonder how much of that is the bad germs and stuff dying off and causing issues as they die off.
It is definitely that, and it's like I would say that this is probably a withdrawal from the shit diet, you know, from eating carbs, eating refined sugar. I don't eat any sugar right now, except for this Red Bull that I'm drinking. See, I am a hypocrite, but like I said, I do cheat on my diet, as you know, a little bit, but I don't go for any white sugar, if you know what I mean. Like
consistent. Like I like this. This is kind of how I say it. Try to get a B in life. 80%, you're hitting it. That's good enough. Don't beat yourself up. It's very different.
I got 70% because 7 is my favorite number. So
70.
So you know,
same idea. You know, you can't say I didn't hit 100%, so I'm worthless. You got to say I got 60%, I got 50. You know, and you want to be. And the thing is, you want. It's like a stock. It's not about having a great day and you're great, and then having a low day and whatever. It's about getting the trend as it's going over time and getting it going the right direction. You know. So.
And you know, and when it comes to this diet, right? I'm not saying eat only red meat or anything like that. Eat meat. That's what I'm saying. And try and eat as good quality meat as you possibly can, because there's lots of industrial meat out there that is, you know, just stuffed with hormones and antibiotics and all sorts of shit.
I got some grass-fed milk recently. We've been on oat milk, like from oat milk for a while. That's pretty good too. But me and my girl, we got some grass-fed milk, and it's just so much tastier. It tastes so much better, man. It's crazy.
So much better. And it's like, you look, I got like a 36-day aged ribeye from Tesco. Okay, that was awful. And I got a 21-day aged, just a normal basic ribeye from another grocery store that actually has really good quality meat, and the steak was outstanding, and it was half the price. Okay, like I said, I am always about quality over quantity. I say in every single case of every single thing in life. Okay, Go for quality. Don't go for quantity. Don't be a greedy bastard. You can do better than that. Although you know, again, I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because I do that so much. But try and do that as much as possible, you know, and don't beat yourself up if you don't deliver 100%. Just try and do your best, and then the following day try and do better, and that's it. But you know, but try and eat as good meat, as good, you know, quality of meat as you possibly can, but also eat some mushrooms, eat some greens every now and then, okay? Some broccoli, I don't know. Eat avocados because they're good for your brain, very good for your brain, and they're, you know, they're actually a fruit. And you know, to a contrary to what a lot of people think, because I heard even from my mom that avocado is a vegetable. It's not. I don't think it is.
That's cool though. That's cool. I didn't know. I never really thought about it, but that makes sense. It'd be more of a fruit than a vegetable, the way it grows.
And you know,
it's probably because of the way it grows, just like tomatoes.
Yeah, it's like it's quite mind blowing, huh? But yeah, they're very good for you. So eat avocados and bananas and meat and eat fish. I heard that there's a lot of dodgy stuff about fish these days because of the pollution, you know, because of how poisoned the waters are, and obviously we're not
farming fish is not done well. It's not done well at all. It could be done well. There are ways to do it, but they'd rather get a bunch of fat, unhealthy fish and dye and color them the right color to make it look like it's the right thing than just give you a healthy fish in the first place. So
that's so wrong. That's just as wrong as the fucking artificial meat. Like that is what
and
I
fat,
think about.
real quick, protein and fat is so important. Like protein, overall protein consumption as you're a kid, when you're growing up, that affects your brain development. And literally what our brain is made out of is fat. Or like the actual cells and the way it's all tied together, it's actually fat. It's not amino acids binding together to create proteins. It's not glucose and other sugars binding together to become carbohydrates, but it's actually like fatty tissue in the brain that's like all. So it's healthy fat, healthy protein, like you said, quality over quantity. It makes such a big difference.
Absolutely.
I've been in a weird position because I've been overweight most of my life, and somewhere when I was really young, I was healthy and had a great diet and everything, like up until about age 8, and then everything kind of went to shit. But I got introduced to McDonald's and ice cream sandwiches and all this kind of stuff.
Tell me about it.
But I've always had the mentality that like I'm not afraid to say I'm fat because it is what it is. And I'm choosing, like, I'm honest with myself. I'm not going to put in the work. I'm not going to put in the work to change it. So I'm just going to say it is what it is. And I'm living. This is how I'm living. This is how I'm choosing to be. And I'm okay with that. So like you know, at first I thought it was a cigarette. I didn't know what it was that you were smoking, but people smoke cigarettes. People have, you know, all sorts of bad healthy, you know, choices. Skydiving isn't very great for your health when you think about when it goes wrong, you know.
Probably not.
And I know. So this sort of, so it's an important thing for sure. But I don't even know what my point was with this necessarily. But I just
you were talking
wanted
about
to say.
You were talking about that you know that you've been overweight most of your life, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I just wanted to say, like, now I'm much more focused on it, and I kind of want to get things dialed in. But I've understood the truth of all of this for a pretty long time. Elliott Hulse, I don't know if you know who Elliott Hulse is. He's big on the internet. He used to just be a strength and conditioning coach that was like a philosopher too, and then it grew into now he's sort of a leader of a whole network of young men trying to be men in the realist sense of the word. So he's someone worth checking out.
How do you spell his second name? Do you know how to spell his second name?
Hulse, Hulse.
Okay. I haven't heard about him, but I will definitely look him up after after we're done.
Yeah, so
But yeah, please
he
continue.
was. So I started studying him and his worldview and and sort of learning from him 12 years ago or so. And he knew, so not just, so like, here's the thing, carnivore diet is really good for white people. And for people whose ancestors are more so closer to the equator, they ate a lot more grains and a lot more of the food that grows in that region, a lot more fish,
Right.
less red meat. So there's certain, and so that the whole school of thought behind that sort of thinking is called metabolic typing. And so if you've noticed, I've noticed most of the people that are big in the carnivore world are as white as hell.
Yes.
Like
Yes, sir.
it's mostly just a
100%.
bunch of white people. And so I
100%.
think
It's a white.
that's an overlap between metabolic typing and that sort of wave of carnivore dieting, because there are lots of people that are better off with more of a carb-based and fruits and grains-based diet. George St. Pierre, the MMA fighter,
Yes.
his coach Faraz Sahabi, who's in Canada, he's a big-time trainer. He doesn't eat a lot of meat at all. A little bit of fish, a little bit of chicken, but mostly just carbs and fruits and stuff like that. So his particular diet is more, and he's Persian, I believe. So it fits,
Actually, interesting that you've mentioned George St. Pierre, because I think it was just him recently that Paul Saladino was doing his diet, the carnivore guy, the carnivore doctor. I think prior to his recent fight or something like that, I think it was George St. Pierre. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was.
I think you're right.
He looked I don't know if you saw him, but he looked incredible, and he was on that diet for like 2 or 3 months. I don't know. It just, obviously he always looks good because he's fucking George St. Pierre, so he'll get a break. But I'm just saying, like, he looked incredible, before that fight. Like he took a picture on Instagram or whatever, and that's what it does.
Yeah, the fight when he went up in a weight class against Michael Bisping, you could tell he was inflated a little bit. He was a little bit unhealthy, and yeah, it's just good to see him lean out and get like dialed in again. He just pushed himself a little bit too far. If he had kept it maybe 6 pounds lighter, so he went up to 205. If he had gone up to 197, 198, and then tried to come down to 185, I think that would have been better. He's George St. Pierre. He just pushed himself too hard. He's gonna do that.
That's
a
the
savage,
mentality, you gotta admire the mentality of all those people, by that I mean, again, Jocko, David Goggins, Tim Kennedy, all those people, they really push themselves.
I love Tim Kennedy.
Really,
Tim Kennedy,
I fucking love
Tim Kennedy for president.
Thank God for Tim Kennedy, dude. Seriously, and what he did recently in Afghanistan. But really, there's so many guys out there, There's Mike Sorelli. I don't know if you heard of him. He's a Navy SEAL. Mike Sorelli, shout out, great dude. He was on Jacko's podcast. There's so many people out there. There's Dave Burke, JP Donnell. There's so many people out there that are really you listen to it, and my mind is fucking blown. I am telling you. I'm a meathead, I don't know much about stuff, so you might think like, oh, what kind of people is this guy listening to? Like, what kind of a fucking hillbilly is this and all that? Like, I don't care. Like, these people motivate the shit out of me, because I can see how hard they push themselves to strive to be as good as they possibly can, and you have to respect that. Whether it's George St. Pierre, whether it's Cameron Haynes. I don't know if you know who Cameron Haynes is, the bowhand.
Yeah, I do. You know what's interesting? You might not know this. Cameron Haynes went onto a committee talking about environmental stuff and all that kind of stuff with the Trump administration. So the Trump administration invited him onto a committee to talk about sustaining wildlife and hunting and all that kind of stuff to help. Now, it's an area that's pretty well regulated to begin with, so he didn't have a lot to add, but he was bringing him in to say, how do we well regulate this area? How do we improve it? And I thought it was really cool that Cameron Haynes, a guy that you wouldn't think would be involved with government, but was called in to be a voice, you know?
I think I heard him talk about this on a podcast. I'm not sure,
I think the Joe
but
Rogan podcast, yeah.
yeah, but really, the dude is such like, and this is it. This is like, why else? Like, why would they invite him on to advise the president? Okay, people think like that Trump was some kind of a fucking show or whatever, like a TV show. No, it was the genuine guy doing a legitimate work, and people don't take him fucking seriously because of those communist outlets out there. Okay, let's not call names because we all know what they are. Okay, it's just it just, you know, it just blows my mind that people take him so with
A lot
like,
of people think that communism died with the Soviet Union,
no
but
way.
the Soviet Union is just one version of communism, and there's
Communism
many
is
versions
much
of
being
it,
imposed
and
right
it is
now.
and they're better at operating in the shadows. The Nazis were like, we're coming, we're gonna knock your door down, you know, we're killing everyone and blitzkrieging your asses. Whereas the Soviets are like, you know, they'll figure it out from the background. And the Chinese government has infiltrated much of the United States and the UK's government through money, through the right kind of influencing, and through you know, blackmail in some cases. But you know, they've gained control without military force. They've done it through other means because it's they're just a more
Much more
sophisticated
efficient.
thing. Yeah, much more efficient.
Much more effective, you know, and
Yeah.
and you can always do damage. You know, you can always do damage, and you can always go.
Yeah,
and
I got
try
a great story. So that
Go
guy I
on.
told you about, Elliott Hulse, his dad is from Belize. And in Belize, he was a dairy farmer, and he would kill the cows. And what he would do is he would go and he would pet them and have them and get them all calm, and they'd just be chilling. And then he'd just come up and he'd slowly get a little insert, just a little prick that would make them start to bleed out like crazy. And they would just be calm and chilling, and then the cow would slowly fall
Oh,
asleep. And it was totally
and it would-
non-lethal.
yeah. Wow.
Communism could potentially be that for us. It's so sneaky that we could be dead before we know it. I think Trump intervened and brought up China and what China's doing to sort of keep that from happening. I'm so grateful for him for doing. No one was talking about China, man. No one was talking about China before Trump. So anyone that talks about China now, you have Trump to thank.
You know what? I can tell you one thing about China. China is exactly what Trump calls it.
And worse.
It is the virus of the world. And we are all fucked because we are all pretty much dependent on them in terms of industrial, you know, manufacturing and all that. And obviously what is going on right now, we've got the Klaus Schwab, and you got the World Economic Forum, and you get all those fucking important people meeting every year, plotting on how to, you know, fuck us all over. Sorry, you were gonna say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we're in a position now where, well, so here's the thing. If China started to behave, meaning no concentration camps for the Muslims, no silliness on trade,
it's not gonna happen.
You know, all these kinds of things. Well, I'm just assuming it. Just assuming it would happen, just assuming it happened. And the only way it would happen is if the entire West, all of Europe, all of Africa, all of the United States, and Latin American countries all got together and say, we're going to start sanctioning China if they don't start changing their behavior. Like that's how you could do it. But one, like, if China behaves, then they can just be a rich partner of ours, and it's fine, right? Like China doesn't have to be our enemy, and that I definitely see that as still on the table. We could get to that place, and China wants to make money. The only way their system stays in place is if they're keeping their people well fed and taking care of their people, and that's the only way they do that is by making money and by generating economic activity. So if the West said, we're not going to buy your stuff anymore if you don't get your shit together, it's a real threat, because the only thing that's holding them up or making China anything but a joke is Western countries buying stuff from them, because they mess their own currency up. They cheat their own system so much that China, if it wasn't for their like before 2001, when they entered the World Trade Organization and before they were a part of this whole system, they were dirt poor. Their GDP was like 2 trillion. Now it's like 12 or 13 or 14, you know?
That's what makes the whole thing so, you know, so ludicrous, that we are all so dependent on them purely because we buy stuff from them. And the funny thing is, you could support your own country, you could support England, you could support Europe. Okay, you don't have to buy. You can support, I don't know, you know, wherever else in the world they manufacture goods. You don't have to buy it from China. The thing is, China does have access to resources to, you know, to produce whatever electronics we have, right? So whatever computer, whatever fucking
so they're the only place
assembled there.
Yeah, we have places in the United States where we could get that stuff too, but for environmental reasons we can't go mine it. And Africa has got a whole bunch. Africa's got a whole bunch of raw resources. So yeah, so like it's interesting, when Trump was doing the trade war, it was a tax on stuff being exported from China coming into the United States. He put a tax on that. All that does is it makes it more expensive for that one lane of trade, but from Vietnam, from Japan, from Poland, for wherever, we can buy stuff from any other country. So once you tax that, it's more expensive there, but everywhere else it's cheaper. So the businesses just start looking elsewhere. So you can implement a tax that's like, over the next 12 months, we're not going to be on China stuff anymore, but it'll be gradual and businesses can make the adjustments and adjust stuff. We're about to hit the end of hour 2, so we'll have to call it here, and then we'll hop back on just for a few more minutes. All right, part 3 with the Effective Mindset podcast host, Mike, and yeah, he'll be here soon. I'm just gonna be chilling here. Yeah. We don't really have a whole bunch more to discuss right now. Oh, hey. Hello, my love. All right. Doing good, man.
So you were saying.
It's cool. My girlfriend is watching this right now, so I was like,
awesome. Hey, how are you doing?
She hasn't watched. Yeah, I haven't seen her watch them too many live, so it's pretty dope. Yeah, so I sort of just concluded a point there. We can wrap it up on sort of tribalism and how in your country, in my country, and in many countries, the people, the everyday folks, are pinned against each other to keep the system going, because if we ever understood the system, we could actually fix it. It's like the movie A Bug's Life, you know? Like the grasshoppers or whatever are only in charge as long as the ants believe that they should be. And once the ants are like, wait a minute, there's like 100 more of us than you. Like think about this with the United States government. There's 435 people in one part of the United States federal government, the House of Representatives, and then in the Senate there's 100. So that's 535 people versus 330 million people. So if we needed to, you know, work against them and do something, like it can happen very easily. It's within our reach. It's just we have to understand that we are each other's allies, and I don't mean this in go get a gun and go do something, but they are the enemy. The elites have their own interests, and the people have their own interests, and we have to, as the people, get together and advocate for our own interests. You know, it's very straightforward.
And you know, and more, I think, you know, more so, just transparency. You know, try and be honest with each other rather than try and support the narrative that you don't even really understand, take a step back and don't get caught up in all this bullshit, because it's so easy, you know, it's so easily done, and the damage is so very obviously really bad, you know, much worse than anyone probably would have ever anticipated.
Yeah, if people were just more honest about where they're at with their views, and more importantly what they don't know,
don't be afraid.
We would have a much better conversation. I think I know a lot about politics, obviously, but I know I'm maybe 55-60% of where, ultimate sort of, even then maybe it's really 15%, I don't know, but I know I'm a fraction of what could be or what I could be. And so there's kind of a freeing humility with that, where I'm like, I'm just a dude. I don't know everything. I'm never going to know everything. I'm just in a process of trying to, keep leveling it up,
Definitely. But, don't be afraid to talk about whatever you're struggling with, If you're having a hard time with something, then don't be afraid to talk to people about that. And I'm not saying go on Instagram live and open up to everyone, make yourself vulnerable. Don't do that, obviously, but be reasonable. Go and reach out to someone you can trust, if there is someone like that. If not, then try and find that person, and or just sit down and be fucking really honest with yourself. Just be really honest with whatever it is you're dealing with. And
that's the most important transparency right there. You got to be real with yourself.
Starts, really. That's where it starts. Like if you're gonna try and fix things, and I think you always should, no matter how good things are, they can always probably be better. Start with yourself, and then try and work with people, because if we get too caught up in our own bullshit, which is so fucking easily done these days with Netflix out there, with your iPhone or your fucking Samsung, whatever you're using, with your with your all those distractions, to keep you away from really from what you are supposed to be, from where we come from. If you get caught up in all that shit, then it's easier to just follow the narrative without asking too many questions, without really thinking ahead of how much that can change moving forward to a point where you not necessarily want to be. So rather than try and get there, I would say open up to people in terms of like, hey, we all have our shit going on, and everybody's fucking, caught up in something, and everybody's life is a little bit fucking crazy at the moment. So don't go crazy there, like with all that. Just try and find some common ground with people around you, and try and listen to people, because I have learned a lot from people that I would definitely disagree with, over the past year and a half on many topics, and I have disagreed with, but I still learned something, because it's good to have a conversation with somebody, okay, rather than just sit at home and watch fucking movies. Everybody can do that, and I do that a lot, but at the same time, try and find some balance, try and go out there to people, and try and, I don't know, just try and, if you're not going to go out there, then try and do that on the internet. Just try and interact with people.
It's very, and then I'll fully say I'm guilty of this too. It's very easy to settle into a narrative about how stupid and crazy the other people are, and by comparison, how sane and smart you are, right? Like, it's very easy to fall into that, into thinking that's the way it is, and so like here in the United States, the average Democrat is not on board at all with any of this nonsense. But the people in front of the camera are. And so it's very easy to think that everyone in this half of the country is a moron and thinks these stupid things. But the reality is that's not the case. It's usually a small fraction. And most of the people are sitting there like, what's going on? How do we get this, figured out? And so people should try to break those narratives and work for it. But the other side of that is this: the everyday person living their life doesn't have 50, 100, 200 hours to pour into studying every single subject. So my trick for people is pay attention to the people you're listening to, and one, how much substance and facts are they bringing up to you, and how much of it is just how they feel and emotions or attacking people. And whenever you can find someone who's saying something and it doesn't quite sound right, or they bring up a fact and it's like, whoa, that's crazy, go look into it. Because sometimes they will not be telling you the whole truth. Like, here's the best example. They'll say COVID is going up 800% in the last month. But it's like 800%, meaning it went from 1 to 8 people out of 1 million, right? Instead of 100,000 to 800,000, it's 1 to 8. But they say it's 800% because they're playing the little games. But it's like,
But that's exactly
when I went and looked at the data, I looked at the cases and the deaths in California. It's really low from like all the way through the pandemic. It's like really low. In the beginning, it was like here. At the peak, it was like here. Now it's like this. And the deaths are even lower. The deaths are like non-existent, but they're acting like it's this giant Delta surge. But in reality, it's basically dead. It's basically done. We're over the pandemic. It's over already. And they just want to keep it going, you know? And it's because they can manipulate it that way. So whenever someone says, "Oh, something is 800% more than what it was before," like, look into it, see what's actually going on.
See what the 800% off, because that's the key point. And this is what they don't tell you. This is how they put that shit into people's heads, you know. This is like you would not be able to otherwise manipulate people other than not tell them everything. They are not necessarily lying to you all the time, because they do that too, and they get caught doing that every single fucking time. But they still will do it, and will get away with it, obviously, because they always do. But you know what they do most commonly is the other thing, you know, and it just
they give you part of it. They give you part of it.
That's it. Sorry, I had a bit of a Joe Biden moment in there. I forgot how I was going to say it.
You're good. So no, it's crazy. But, speaking of Joe Biden moments, man, I was watching. So I'm just a believer right now. We just need to impeach him, just because his mistakes are just going to get worse and worse and worse. Oh, we didn't get to talk too much about the Afghanistan thing. Just real quick.
I have all the time in the world, but I don't want to take too much of your time.
Okay, no worries.
I've got all the time in the world, seriously.
Cool. So with the Afghanistan thing, one, like there's a lot of different sort of angles on it. Like, should we, first off, like when you're going to decide, do you go into the country? Like, that's its own decision. And once you go in, then you have to reassess and say, now that we're in here, then what do we do? Because like by the time Trump showed up, you know, we had already been in there for 15 years, and Obama had done his stuff, and Bush had done his stuff, and Trump was not responsible for any of that. So it's just up to him now, after it's already started, to say, how do we resolve this going forward for the best outcome? And for me, keeping a small force in there and
absolutely
and like we did in Japan, like we did in Germany, that's the only model that's been proven to be successful at all. And it's interesting. I was talking to a guy who's very smart and has a big following and everything the other day, and he called me retarded for thinking this way. But
nice.
There is always the possibility of Nazi Germany coming back in some way in Germany. Like, that is always going to be a concern. So if we're not in a position where once that starts to happen, we can like stamp it out immediately, we're inviting it to happen again. So like
we
right
are
now,
inviting it to happen again right now.
With China. Yeah, with China, we are making them richer and they're building up their military, and you have all these things sort of happening. If we had been doing that with Nazi Germany, you know, and made them richer and more powerful than we were, whatever, you know, we might have lost the war, you know. So
look to me,
keeping an eye on the world, keeping our military all throughout the world and ready to respond. Like what people don't understand is, like, if you don't have any military people within 5,000 miles or so of a particular area, you can't do anything there. So they can start setting up whatever they want and building it up and launch stuff off of there, and you don't have the response time. It's not like you could just send a rocket into Germany once the Nazis show up again, right? Like once
No.
you gotta have people there to handle the problem, to be talking to people, and to be sort of negotiating these things. Like it's interesting because America is the first empire to not take the spoils of war. Like we were the first empire to we beat all of Europe. We took over all this land, gained all this control, and in various other countries, we have a bunch of influence, and we have a lot of control over them, and we just leave them alone for the most part and let them do their thing, good, bad, and ugly. Like we're the first empire to sacrifice the lives, sacrifice the money, beat another world power, Nazi Germany and all that, and Imperial Japan, and sort of have this world order sort of stabilized. And then we're just like, just be peaceful and live your lives, and we'll take a step back. And on one hand, I agree, I understand why, and I think ultimately you want that freedom for people. But I think after World War II, during that brief window where we had a nuclear weapon and no one else did, the United States could have made a giant move for freedom in the world and said, you guys need to start changing your laws, changing your human rights standards, getting a Bill of Rights and freedom of religion and freedom of speech and all this, and just start saying, like, we're not going to support you after this World War II thing unless you get your game together. Now, a bunch of other countries, China and and Russia and others, have nuclear weapons, and we're sort of more on an equal playing field with them. So it's a lot harder. And we could still do it, and we should still try to influence the world in a positive way. But after World War II, when we had that brief window of a huge advantage, I think we could have done a lot more than we did. But because we don't have that imperialist, because was
If
it
it was,
FD?
look, if it was
Because
Great
a
Britain,
president was not a dictator, was not an emperor, it didn't go that way, but it could have. I think it was Eisenhower who was the sort of overseer of a lot of that stuff, like bringing down World War II and sort of
yeah,
tying up
I
all
think.
the treaties and stuff afterwards. It was Eisenhower who did that, and he was warning against the military-industrial complex, which is important, but he did not, in my opinion, set the world up for a successful future. We kind of left too many areas of the world on the sidelines, which meant evil can go there and regroup and re-engage.
But you see, this is why I think, like, okay, maybe the US could have made a bigger difference or whatever, you know, maybe things would have been different. Like, I think it would have been different if it was Great Britain. So if it was like, if England was in America, like in terms of like continent wise, you know, if it was the other way around, okay, if I lived in the US right now and you lived in England, if it was England with their king or whatever, then there would be a hell of a different story, okay? The way it's gone. But what really blows my mind is how they mismanaged, how they absolutely botched the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Because I'm not saying withdraw. I never thought it was a good idea. I always thought that, look, leave, I don't know, a few thousand troops there, okay? Just leave a few thousand well-trained soldiers who will protect, who will maintain.
Do you know how big the UK is? Do you know how big the UK is? Like how many million people?
I don't. I'm an idiot.
I think it's like 5 or 6.
How
I'll say 5.5.
What is the UK population? Hold on, Siri.
As of 2020, the population of United Kingdom was 67,886,000.
Oh dang! Okay.
Holy shit! That's like
67 million. All right, more than I was thinking, man. I was way off.
A lot
I
more.
guess I was thinking about Scandinavian countries, but anyways, so Afghanistan is 39 million people.
Okay.
So about 2/3 of the size of the UK, and we just gave that whole country over to the Taliban.
More. That is a lot more people than I thought. I thought Afghanistan, like, see, that's how much of a meathead I am. Because, you know,
I just looked that up a week ago, so don't feel like a meathead. It's that I don't think I've heard anyone other than me talk about the population of Afghanistan. So
trust me, it blows my mind, because what Biden did is, look, I honestly don't have any other explanation to it other than that it was planned to fuck it up so horribly, so severely. It was just incomprehensible, okay, what they did. Instead of, like, I get it, Biden, I get it, Donald Trump was going to withdraw troops, but first things first, I can fucking guarantee it, he was going to take care of the gear, of the equipment, of all the top secret, maybe not top secret, but really, yeah, it is top secret shit, right? The China shouldn't catch your fucking F-35 or anything like that. So,
Yeah, the Black Hawk
or whatever
helicopters
they
and all
left there, or tanks or whatever, right? Because it's all military top tech, you know. It's like top tier technology that the
apparently
Taliban are
they
now
ripped
selling
out a
to
lot of
China.
computers and stuff beforehand, but yeah, they left a lot of hardware back there. Yeah.
Taliban are selling that shit to China now for fucking pennies, right? Excuse me. We're talking about like they would probably sell them some drone or whatever for a couple of $1 million because they they could do with some cash, and the China they have a lot of money, so they don't mind. They need they need American technology so they could replicate it and do their own shit, what they always do. Like what do they do over there? Obviously we all know what they do. They copy whatever the fuck the other developed countries have created, and then they make thousands and thousands and millions more of their own at a fraction of the price, because they have all of the resources and all that,
The Chinese government
arming them.
the Chinese government manipulates their economy to make it so that it's the cheapest place to make stuff.
Exactly, and this fucking dinosaur, okay, I'm talking about Sleepy
Biden,
Joe there. Yeah, that's it. So this idiot, okay, just literally handed $90 billion worth of military equipment to the Taliban terrorists, who fucking sold some of that shit to China. So in other words, Sleepy Joe has just armed, Chinese military, Chinese fucking intelligence. He's just a fucking idiot. Like, he's so, like, this alone, including the military dogs, the service dogs that he left in Afghanistan, including God knows how many people that he actually left behind.
Check this out. About 45 minutes from where I live, if you drive north, there's a school district there that sent 27 kids from a bunch of different schools to Afghanistan. I don't know why they were there. I don't know what was going on. Those kids are still over there.
I read about that story. It just, I honestly don't know.
It's crazy.
Like, if you try and
Biden. So I believe Biden is intentionally, like he's basically intentionally, he was put there to intentionally bring America down from the inside, however they can. Luckily, he's very limited in what he can do. But here's the thing: so Joe Biden was a senator back in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. And in the 80s, when the Soviet Union was involved in Afghanistan, and we were on the other side funding the Taliban back then to try to topple the communist government in Afghanistan. When the USSR, when the Soviet Union pulled out and pulled out their support from the Afghani military and the Afghani government, in 1989, the exact same thing happened. They gave up without a fight and gave all the equipment and money over to the Taliban. So when Joe Biden was in Congress at the federal level and knew that this was happening, knew this had happened, probably got some intelligence reports on it and all that kind of stuff, like, Joe Biden knew this is how it would go, and he still executed it the way he did. And here are a few facts that just show you that it was intentionally botched. And even in little ways. One, they left at 0300 hours, 3 a.m. local time, when everyone's asleep. And they took off. It wasn't like the details were talked about ahead of time. They pulled out emergency fast, rip everything out, go as fast as possible. and so check this out. And then next stage, there's a point where the Taliban has the countryside in control, but there's none of the cities. There's like 70 something cities in Afghanistan. None of the city governments have fallen yet. We don't redeploy our military to create a perimeter and hold the Taliban there. We keep retreating. We keep going. We don't change our plan. So we know the Taliban's on the doorstep of taking over the cities, and we don't go and handle the situation. And then over the course of 9 days, the first city fell, and then all of the cities had fallen. And nowhere in those 10 days did our military go do anything.
Look,
and last point, this will be the final thing. It's a little depressing. The 13 Marines that died were told to stay longer at that post 2 hours beyond when they were supposed to leave, specifically to get, and I don't mean this negatively towards the UK, specifically to get British citizens out. And they died because they stayed there longer to get British citizens out, but American citizens are still left over there. So none of this makes any fucking sense unless you want to cause death and chaos. I did this. You know that meme with the little girl, and she's like, and there's like a building burning over there, in the background or whatever. I did a meme where I just said this is Biden, and that's like
look,
chaos
you just
or whatever.
blew my fucking mind. You just blew my mind with this thing. I actually didn't know that they were going to get the some British people out there. But really, look, the whole.
So Biden needs to be impeached. He needs to be kicked out now. He's only going to make the world a worse place the longer he's there. And I hope he doesn't get assassinated, because he might end up being the Antichrist and he might come back. So I know that sounds crazy, but 1% of me believes that could happen. And I think that keeps me from being like, no one murder him, please. No assassinations. We don't want any.
Look, I think that's the last thing I would ever want for anyone. Okay, I think he should just fucking. Okay, look,
he should be fired.
He should be fired. That's for sure. He will never go to prison because he's done that all as a president. So he's got fucking presidential whatever immunity.
Yeah.
So I'm not, and I don't even, he belongs there, but I don't wish him that. I wish him to fucking reflect on his fuck ups rather than saying that it was a monumental success. This was the biggest fuck up in a history of military. Okay, this was the biggest fucking fuck up, in other words, in the history of humanity. I think when it comes to military operations.
It's really hard to argue with that, man. It's hard to think of a more stupid thing. How do you
fuck up any worse? How can you fuck up any worse? The only thing worse because you know what's the worst fucking thing about this whole thing is that the fucking leftist media right now will turn it all around. They will twist it all so that the military will take the fucking blame for that. The military will take the hit. The troops, people who sacrifice, people who selflessly, people who fucking selflessly are willing, to sacrifice their life for the country. People who go there and are willing to do whatever the fuck it takes, whatever they have to do. People who are the most selfless, the best fucking people out there. People like that will now take the heat for Biden's and Kamala Harris's monumental failure. And every single thing this fucking guy did since he got into office has been a failure. Every single thing. Name one good thing, because I don't know if you know who JP Sears is. So
I do. I'm a big fan. He's funny. He's funny as hell.
Love JP Sears, shout out. So JP Sears recently made a very good video about Biden's accomplishments. So I suggest everyone who ever listens to this go there and check it out.
It's an elaborate and impressive list.
It is a very impressive list, and there is literally not one good thing that I could think of. Okay, not one.
Yeah.
Not one.
No. I got only because I've done more research than a lot of people with what Joe Biden's done. There's one executive order of his that I remember that was okay. And that was just requiring people entering the United States legally to get a COVID test before they come in.
Cool. Fair enough.
That's it. That's it.
You
And
know
here's
what?
the thing. Here's the thing. We have hundreds of thousands of people, and like 20% of them are COVID positive. Sorry, about 20% of the people coming across the southern border of the United States from Mexico right now are positive for COVID. At least
Oh, I
that's the
thought it
only
would be
number I've
more.
seen was 21%. So it's like, even with that thing I mentioned where it's like the one good thing he did, that's only for people legally coming over into the country. That's not for all the people on the border. They're not
That's a
testing them all.
fraction.
They're doing
That's a
a batch
fraction.
testing where they test some of them to see sort of what the level is of the whole community, but they're not actually testing everyone and holding them off until they don't have COVID anymore. It's so dumb.
So remember what you said at the beginning about the guns, that the argument that they save more lives than they end, right?
Yeah.
So the very same
100
thing you could,
times more lives.
and the very same thing you could say about Biden's presidency. The 100 times more fuck ups don't justify the one
What
fucking,
little
like
bit.
the
Yeah.
one bullshit fucking thing that he's done doesn't justify 100 fuck ups. Okay, so that's it. That's like that itself. 7 months has shown everyone what this guy's capable of. 7-8 months has it been. You know, the guy's capable of like what I think Obama said about him. I don't know if it's true or not, but don't underestimate Joe's ability to fuck things up. Do that. Okay. I don't know if that was
I'm like laugh crying, man. But
I don't
yeah.
know if that was true, but that was fucking true, I think.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it was like reported behind closed scenes sort of statements. He never like went out in public and was like, you can never underestimate how much how much my vice
he did
president
like
can
say
fuck
that,
shit
yeah,
up.
someone heard him say, someone heard
But
him,
it is
someone heard
attributed to
someone hear
him.
someone
And
say
and
that.
this wasn't behind closed doors. Osama bin Laden said he actually wanted Biden to be president because it would be so catastrophic for the United States that it would help them bring us down. So that
Well,
is true.
tell me
Bin
one thing,
Laden
okay?
did say that, and that is scary enough.
Maybe, I don't know if you have a couple of more minutes, but just while we're at it, while we're on the topic of, you know, presidents and all that, what do you think, what do you think of Kamala Harris's competency, as in like her, I don't know if credentials is the right word here, because I'm not a big fan of the whole education thing. Like, I'm a college dropout, and you
So
know, and I
here's
don't.
what I'll say: her career successes are probably because she owns a pair of knee pads.
He's okay.
And the only reason why Biden chose her
Virtue
is
signaling.
probably because of that reason, and also because she is absolutely sold out to the powerful special interests he's sold out to, and she is very smart. Like she's a crappy politician, and I don't think she's leading for the people in a good way, but she's not a stupid person. She's very smart. So you
Do you
talked
think
about
she's very
Kamala.
smart with all the
Yeah, Kamala Harris.
fucking cackle and all that? Like,
Well,
with
I
all
mean,
her,
she's awkward and stuff. But what? So here's the thing: like Hillary Clinton, right? Like evil people can still be very, very smart, and if anything, that makes them more dangerous. And so I personally think Kamala Harris is
Hillary
a very
Clinton is the
competent and
best.
smart person. I think so to your point, you were talking about what is she doing? I think she's actually managing the show in the background. And I think Biden, if you watch Biden, like I watched him talk about the August jobs report, and he was sort of reading the teleprompter and he was saying stuff and it was really good. And then he was asked about the Texas abortion law, and within 5 seconds he said, "Oh, so the law about Louisiana, right?
Standard,
The law about Louisiana, right?" So like within 5 seconds he said Louisiana when they said Texas. And so like when he's on teleprompter and he's being told what to say, he can kind of pull it off. But the second that stops, he's falling apart. So I think Kamala Harris is there to manage things in the background until he eventually gets impeached, and then she'll take over. And you know what's funny? She'll be the first female president of the United States, but she will not be the first elected president of the female president of the United States. No one voted her in to be president. People voted for Biden
Look,
basically,
she
and
fell out in
then
the
he chose her.
primaries. She fell out in the fucking primaries. Tulsi Gabbard destroyed her. Okay, and
Double
she's just
kneecap just took her out.
Tulsi Gabbard is would be so much better doing the job. But obviously Kamala Harris, the only reason they picked her, like two reasons, obviously. First of all, she's a prostitute. She sold out easily, and she it was a fair deal. It was like, for her, she couldn't do any fucking better in the corporate world, in a corporate world of corporate government. She couldn't do any better. Okay, it's serving all the fucking certain corporations and all that, because I'm pretty sure that once she steps down one day, once her career as a VP or whatever, or the president, quite likely is over, then she will be doing exactly the same thing as Obama does and his fucking predecessor, and
Getting
all
paid
that.
for speeches, getting Netflix deals and all that. You get taken
Dude,
care of after
how
the fact.
fucking expensive was his new house? Like, we're talking like 15 fucking million, 10
Yeah.
fucking million, 5.
Yeah,
Like
12 to
what?
15, somewhere in there.
What the fuck are we talking about? Ex-president of the United States.
Oh, and with global warming and all that, and that's a totally
much
different
is it?
topic. But it was a beachfront property.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is one of the more interesting points. Why would someone who's afraid of the oceans rising because of global warming buy oceanfront property?
Exactly. And why would someone who's so fucking so concerned about the climate change and global warming buy a villa that probably produces more fucking waste or whatever, and consumes
Big
more
electricity bill and all that.
fucking KFC 24/7? It's like, it's probably an insane amount of resources that go into that little fucking house.
I have a statistic for you whenever you're talking to anyone around you about global warming. And
Mm-hmm.
this is just to talk about how we solve the issue, not talking about like the details of the issue. If you add up all of the CO2 that humans emit into the atmosphere, all of it added up, it's about 40 billion tons.
Okay.
The natural system, nature, emits about 800 billion tons and absorbs and brings back out of the atmosphere 800 billion tons, so what that translates into is more. So what that translates to is humans are 5% of the overall game.
That's it.
Nature is sending out 800 and pulling back 800, and we're only putting out 40. So if we raise the natural system's ability to absorb CO2 just a little bit, we fix the problem. But it would take all CO2 emissions by humans added up over 10 years to get rid of the excess CO2 in the atmosphere. But on the other side of it, a 5% increase in the absorption of nature, and that solves the problem just as much. So and the way we do that is just switching agriculture from 2D to 3D, because then you're using less land, and then the forest will come back. Most of the forests have been lost to agriculture. Most of the land that's been cleared has been cleared for agriculture. So, but yeah, so all of the policies that they're implementing on carbon taxes and gas taxes and all of the emission stuff and all that stuff, it's all bullshit. The emissions for health, for like lung health and breathing, that's not bullshit. But for CO2 and all that stuff, that's all bullshit. It's even the Paris Climate Accord said that they would only reduce global warming by 0.2 degrees by the year 2100. 80 years from now. Marginal difference. And that's all of the crap that they're doing, and it's not going to actually solve the problem. So but yeah, that 5% number really makes you understand humans aren't the main thing here exactly. It's more so what we've done to nature and agriculture and deforestation that's caused the problem. It's not humans having a car.
No, of course it's not. And far as I know, cows produce more,
Methane.
harmful gases than, yeah, that's it, than the McDonald's does. So even though it's all cows, bit irony. But no, honestly, all it is money. Again, it's the same as vaccine industry, it's the same as big pharma, it's the same as the whole philanthropy business.
Big food,
There's no fucking
like
thing such as
Impossible Meat.
philanthropy. Like, the whole concept, sorry, what the
I
word
was
that
saying like big food and Bill Gates with the
yeah.
Impossible Meat and all that. It's all money.
And actually like Bill Gates is one person on this planet that I like the very least, for so many reasons. Like, this guy, he
Bill
just
Gates,
earned
you're
it.
my least favorite.
He fucking earned it, he earned it. Bill Gates, you earned it. No, seriously, the guy's an asshole, and you can say that the guy is obviously obsessed. Okay, he's obsessed with population control. He's obsessed with vaccinating everyone, and that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be, it could be what people say, he's a eugenist or whatever. I don't necessarily buy into that. I would say that he's a little bit less sinister than that, but a little bit more greedy. Okay, he's probably more about the power. Okay, first of all, just control, not necessarily fucking eliminating people, although we don't know the long-term consequences of what is currently being implemented, if I can put it in these words. But his heavy investment and all that, I think, is mostly motivated by power and money, and those two things are sinister enough for me to call that piece of shit out on his whatever the fuck he's doing, right? So we're not talking just the vaccines, we're not talking just the philanthropy, and trying to help everyone. How is it that all these philanthropists, they, in pretty much a case of every single investment, we're talking about at least a tenfold of a profit, okay? Like, they make about a 2,000% profit on the vaccines, as far as I know. Like, this is official Bill Gates information. He's like 20-1 return on the investment. So if he invests 5 billion and he's got a lot more than that, then he's gonna get 100 back. And he has invested, I'm pretty sure, a lot more than that into all the technology surrounding all that stuff and all that. I don't want to get your podcast off the air.
No, you're good. Don't worry about it.
No, look, seriously,
We can
dude,
say everything. We can say ivermectin and all the stuff.
but honestly, this is what I always
No horse dewormer.
shout out,
Dude,
Joe
that's
Rogan.
crazy. That's crazy. Did you see that? The Joe Rogan
I
dewormer
fucking
stuff?
saw that,
Dude, that's crazy, man. Like, they're
seriously.
legit trying to say that this disease, like, they're caught in the lie, and Joe Rogan has caught them in the lie, and they're like, we got to attack him now, panic. And I bet a bunch of people are like, Joe Rogan wouldn't just take some random drugs just cuz. And so they're going to look into it, hopefully. I would hope so. Because, like,
Look, dude.
like, could you imagine if Jocko Willink was on the New York Times, and they were saying that he's using horse tranquilizer to sedate himself before he does his own surgery. You'd be like, okay, that's bullshit. Let me look into that. That seems so weird. Like you wouldn't expect Joe Rogan to be like, oh, you know how there were people that had like powdered versions of like household cleaner that had hydroxychloroquine in it, and they were like taking it. Like, wow. Joe Rogan is not going to do that. Joe Rogan is not going to do that kind of thing, and
Joe
so
Rogan's not one of those.
And that's what they're trying to say he's doing. So yeah,
Joe Rogan is not one of those people for whom the warning labels are made these days. Such as don't drink the fucking battery liquid and all that out of a car. It's like, I saw that meme a few days ago that, like 20, 30 years ago, a car manual told you how to change the spark plugs or whatever in your fucking car, right? Or a battery.
Mhm.
And these days, what it tells you is don't drink the fucking window liquid or like battery liquid or whatever. Like
I like
that
that. I
just
like
tells you
that.
where we've gone as a species. We are getting dumber and dumber. And one of my favorite quotes of all time. I don't know if you ever watched Californication with David Duchovny. It was a Showtime TV series, TV show about 14 years ago, with David Duchovny. I just said that. Sorry, I'm a little high.
You're
Anyway,
good.
so he said that we are getting dumber and dumber, and you know, people, or it's like people are going for this convenience. You know, people totally focus on the comfort rather than on grammar, rather than on punctuation, rather than, you know, on trying to be articulate. Everybody's just fucking LOLing everything and all that, you know. So it's like we are really going backwards, and we are pretty much all participating in it. And it's like
The best way to
not
solve
everyone.
this, not to jump ahead of you, but I think it's
Go on.
important. The best way to solve this is for everyone to start becoming a lifelong learner. Because if you keep
That's it.
pushing
That's
your
it.
brain and keep it working, we won't fall back. And the thing is, if you're surrounded by smart people, you're going to pick up a few things. So at each one of us individually that decides to try to take our own intellect or our own education to the next level, we're adding to the overall average. You know, we're raising the
That's why I'm
average.
enjoying. Look, that's why I'm enjoying this podcast so much, because I'm talking to someone a lot smarter than I. So seriously, dude,
Well,
you're helping me a
it's
lot.
very nice. Thank you.
No, but honestly, look, the way I see it, Tim Kennedy said that on Jacko's podcast. I don't know if you listened to that one, but he said, "Be humble, or you're gonna get humbled." Okay, and this is those are the words to live by to me. Seriously, just stay humble, try and keep learning rather than try and listen to people more rather than talk. Okay, it's hard in our industry, if you will. Okay, whatever we do in our hobby, whatever this is to you, it's a little, you know, that's what it is to me at the moment, but I'm trying to make it a thing. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. But look, be humble, as in try and always learn something from people rather than educate people on something. Because if you will try and do that, then sometimes it's going to go well, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty meaningless, because people will learn from you either way if they will be willing to learn. You don't have to try and educate them unless they are asking specific questions.
So the humility thing you talked about, absolutely, but it's basically like you want to try to figure out how to be a teacher and a student at the same time, always. Because like when I was in class growing up or whatever, if I understood something in class and the people around me didn't get it as quickly or whatever, or the other way around, if they got it and I didn't, they would help me or I would help them, and we would help each other kind of get a sense of what the actual thing was. And
Sure.
so that's a combination of kind of being a teacher and a student, always trying to learn, but also sharing what you do know. That's the thing, is like you don't have to know
Oh yeah,
especially with
absolutely.
politics, especially, I mean, with life, but especially with politics. Everyone deserves to be a part of the conversation. And like the
Absolutely.
political discussion belongs to everybody. So like, regardless of what you do and you don't know, like it's worth jumping in, you know, because you're only going to learn more the more you engage with it, and the less seriousness you put on it all, but you know, you'll be better off.
See, I am totally 100% on the same page with you on this. So you just said it a lot more articulately. So like I said, what I just said checks out. You are a bit smarter than me. Because that's pretty much what I meant. And look, I'm just saying, don't try and go there and you know, impose your wisdom on people. Okay, that's it. Like if people will want to learn from you, then they will learn from you, because you make yourself available. You make your whatever, your knowledge, whatever you learned, whatever you heard, you know, you make that available to people whenever they want to listen to it. But on the other hand, I think, you know, listening is more important than educating.
My phone died. I'm so sorry. But this is part 4 of episode 19 of Uncommon Conversations. Mike will be on shortly, and we will wrap things up. Unfortunately, it got cut off at a poor moment. Luckily, I have the settings towards archiving these live, so hopefully this live will be hopefully I'll be able to upload it a little bit later. All right.
Good, yeah. Oh, good. I've got it all saved in my archive, so good.
Nice.
Right, yeah. So yeah. I actually lost track of what I was saying. What was I saying?
You were just sort of talking about you're talking about being humble and always learning. And listening.
Yeah.
You're talking about listening. And so here's the thing. Here's what's interesting on your point. Like I talk about being a student and a teacher. Whenever I would have a personal conversation with someone and like try to learn about politics in my everyday life, I was trying to do that. But in the bigger game that I'm in now, you're talking about the industry we're in. I basically I spent 10 years studying and listening to the smartest people I could find on politics and trying to go off of that. And now I'm in a position to actually start talking about it. So it's like, so to your point, I listened for basically 10 years.
There you go.
And now I have something to say. So yeah, now that's not true. Obviously, I said the teacher student thing and all that, but essentially you have to listen a lot and understand that whatever field you're going to go into, whatever you're going to do, there's a bunch of people that have thought about it a bunch before you. There's a bunch of people that have lived before you and done it. And there's more knowledge out there to get than you'll ever have on your own. So yeah, stage one is always going to be just open your ears up, open your mind up, and just start listening.
Always try and learn something. And you know, very recently, I think it was yesterday, I was cooking and I started listening to an old podcast of Joe Rogan's with Henry Rollins. I was fortunate enough to have saved it on my, like I literally downloaded it on my Apple Podcast when it was still available, you know. So I have an actual downloaded copy on my phone. If I delete that, and the one that I'm holding in my hand, if I delete that off my downloads, then I'm not going to be able to re-download it because the only episode available at the moment is there was one with Matthew Walker. But anyway, you know, all the rest are on Spotify or are censored by Spotify. Obviously, some of them are, so they are to be found somewhere in the other corners of the internet, right? But you know, the one with Henry Rollins is literally so mind-blowing. It's so good, you know. It's so and he's such an inspirational. That's the
one where he went to North Korea, right?
Henry Rollins.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. I think he went everywhere. I think this dude has been like he said he's been in Africa like 20 odd times, you know. And he, as far as I know, he's a sober guy. Okay, he doesn't party like most white people do. So you know, so
hey, we all like to party.
I mean, I used to. I don't really do that anymore because I just don't find that entertaining, especially the hangovers and all that. I am definitely not. Never been a heavy drinker. But I
had some alcoholics in my family, so I was wise enough in my youth to avoid it. I was straight edge through my young education, public education, so I avoided a lot of mistakes that I might have otherwise made. But even now, like I might have a shot or two once in a great while. Might drink 3, 4, 5, 6 shots or something, like on our Halloween party or something like that. But outside of that, alcohol is not my thing. THC, marijuana, is definitely my thing, much more so than alcohol.
Look, alcohol, I can handle a few beers a day. But if it happens for a few days in a row, for example, I get a little carried away. I have a few, with a steak, then I have a few with some ribs, and it's like it always, just you can literally check it down so easily. It's nice. It's fucking delicious. Makes you feel good, if you don't go too many. If you can handle the hangover, like funny thing, because I take care of myself, I eat a lot of supplements, I hydrate, workout, I don't really get a hangover. Recently, I poisoned myself with fucking McDonald's. I had 2 chicken wraps, whatever, sweet chili wraps, and a double cheeseburger, and I was throwing up like a fucking cat for like 5 times within a few hours. And I had 3 bottles of beer. Okay, and a day prior to that, I had 7 bottles of beer, and I had barely any hangover in the morning. Just because I try and take care of myself on a daily basis, so I can kind of handle that. However, where I'm going with this is, it never ever got me feel the way. It never made me feel the way weed makes me feel. Okay, like literally, marijuana is my thing. Like I've been smoking for 12 years now. For 10 years I've been smoking pretty much every day, and I'm not talking about some crazy fucking Cypress Hill be real kind of amounts, nothing like that, but I've had my times when I used to smoke quite a lot. Like, for example, back in 2015, I would smoke about an ounce a week. So that was quite crazy.
That's pretty intense, yeah.
Yeah, now I'm
That's
nowhere
an
near
expensive habit.
it was fucking crazy at the time, dude. But it was like, I was 24 at the time, so I was like, who cares? I'm gonna make all the fucking money in the world. So now all I'm making, I'm just gonna spend it. And I was probably making a little bit too much for a little shit that I was. Because I just got I was totally irresponsible with it. But cut the long story short, now I smoke very reasonable amounts. And by that I mean about quarter of what I used to smoke then, which is about a quarter a week, maybe a little bit over that. But that's really moderate, and no beer on the planet has ever made me feel that good. Okay, no fucking other substance on the planet ever made me feel the way weed makes me feel. And I am not a big fan of sobriety because of that. Like, I am a big fan of sobriety when it comes to my role models, people that I get inspired by. I'm a big fan that, for example, Jacko is sober. I'm a big fan of Henry Rollins.
I have an interesting point on this topic. Like, if someone's taking insulin for their diabetes, are they sober? Now, what I mean is, obviously, sober is more so about your mental state, but THC and weed, it doesn't operate on the dopamine receptors and everything. It's got its own cannabinoid system, and we've co-evolved with it. And so, like, if you don't have enough vitamin C, and you take vitamin C every day, and you're going to feel like shit, and you're going to get withdrawals if you don't take your vitamin C. Like, are you a drug addict? Are you a dependent? Or are you just taking something you like and it's good for yourself, right? So marijuana can kind of be in that same vein a little bit, where it's not going to rob you of your sobriety in the fact that it's keeping you from thinking anything, or keeping you from facing anything, or handling anything.
Take, yeah.
Very good. It's yeah. So it's so I just see it as different. Like sobriety. Yeah, I see weed as like one of the only recreational drugs that really, really, really is medicinal too. Really, really can. It's like taking your daily medicine.
Recreational. I really don't think it's recreational. Like, put it this way: whoever does it for recreational purposes, gets the medicinal effect that they perceive as recreational. But it's like. You can get sedated, or you can get fucking high on all sorts of medicine, right? So it's like, to me, it's sort of like, it's just a misinterpretation of what it really is. because
Yeah.
there is nothing fucking recreational if you in smoking a few hits too many and getting freaked the fuck out, and just because, and I'm not you start thinking about mortality or the
Dude,
universe,
that's funny. I've never thought
whatever,
about like, let's go have some recreational activities, right? Let's
there's
go have
nothing
some
fucking
fun. Let's
recreational
go
in
do
that.
whatever. There's nothing recreational about. You're gonna be sitting there on the couch like, what have I been doing all my life?
You're gonna think about
So,
death. You're gonna think about
yeah,
death a lot. You're gonna think
yeah.
about fucking all the fuck ups in it. You're gonna think about all the embarrassment. You're gonna think about the fucking universe, the asteroids and all that shit. You're gonna think about a lot of that, and it's like who would call that recreational? I would say recreational is going to Five Guys, getting a burger, and then going to the fucking movies. All right, getting a fucking smoking weed and not knowing how it's gonna kick in is not recreational. I'm saying like I can do it for recreational purpose, like I'm doing it now, but I'm more doing it for the purpose of like so that I can set in the right mindset, so that I can maybe go a little bit deeper in the topics, than I would normally do. Because I certainly can notice in my case that weed just unlocks the door for me. It's like, or maybe like it takes off the speed limiter, It's like I can normally go like up to 70. I smoke a joint and I can go up to 110, and that's more optimal speed, because at that speed I can think faster. I don't know. I can fucking try and justify it 100 different ways. And someone who never smoked, or my mom, or someone will always say, you're full of shit, and this is just your fucking excuse. This is just your justification so that you can continue doing this. Whatever the fuck, if that's how you feel, if that's what you really think, because for the most part, it is not really what people think. It's just that what everybody fucking else says. So it's like, oh, so that must be the case. No, either smoke a fucking joint and prepare to get freaked out and then start thinking about things, or just, keep that, maintain that opinion, whatever you want to do, or maybe try and take an objective point of view and maybe try and listen to someone who actually has been doing it for a while. What do you think? I'm trying to fucking hurt myself? No, I'm doing this because it works. It actually works. Yeah. It actually does fucking wonders. Of all the things in the world, I could cope without anything. I don't have to drink Red Bull. I don't have to eat sugar. I don't have to fucking eat crisps, and I don't even like them too much anymore. But like I can handle a lot of shit without weed, but with weed is just so much more manageable. So I really don't see any arguments against it, other than you can pretty much get carried away with it quite easily. If you're not a strong-minded person, if you're prone to if you're vulnerable to for whatever reason to substance abuse, then it's quite easy to abuse weed, because it makes you feel so good, and you build up tolerance if you do it all the fucking time, and it's easy to get carried away with it if you're not really strong-minded, okay? And most people aren't, because we live in the times where being weak is encouraged, where comfort is encouraged, rather than striving and hustling, whatever, trying to work hard. So
it's interesting what you said about the way it makes you think differently. So I just watched a few videos back in the day, but I have a metaphor for this that kind of works, and it speaks to your point. So basically, alcohol keeps you from thinking deeply about anything. It like keeps you on the shallow layer, and it numbs you to anything else. And ideas can't add on top of each other. That's why you have a guy who's drunk, who's saying the same thing an hour later, because he just keeps being stuck on the same observation and point or whatever. And like, if you imagine like underneath this ground layer is all your thoughts and your brain and everything you can do. Alcohol puts a hard board in there so that you can jump and you can get into accidents and you can do whatever you want, and you're never getting deeper below that. That's why it's good to numb you from thinking too deeply about certain things. Marijuana thins the ground there, so if you push down, it'll break down even further than it would otherwise. The ideas will all collapse and tie in together much more deeply. And so the way neurologically, it's literally, you have layers of your neurological patterns, and alcohol keeps it on the first layer, and weed makes it so that it'll go deeper up the chain and not go across the chain so much, quite as much. So it really does literally help you connect things in a different way, reflect in a different way, and literally in a good way, think about the world differently, perceive the world differently. Now, this is a side point, and I wanted to get this just so that we don't miss it. I did a podcast with a guy who's an English teacher who who's out of Scotland, actually, funny enough. And his videos, I watched some of his videos actually, and they were good for me. Like I can speak English just fine, obviously. And
What's his name?
his name's so his YouTube channel is called English with Ray. I'll just send you the link, but yeah, English with Ray. His Instagram is Talk with Ray. But for you and for any other friends you have that are also from Poland or from wherever and are learning, it's a great resource. He's really a great teacher, and his way of approaching is like people focused. So when he brings up examples in his YouTube videos, it's his students that mess up on this and this, like words that are similar, not grammatically or with the English language structure or anything, but they sound similar, and in different contexts you say this or you say that phrase. He's really good at breaking down those moments where people have confusion and explaining the differences and when one is used and when the other is used. So I really like that. Even for me, I was learning stuff and I was like, oh, okay, dude, this is awesome. So just because you were talking about that earlier, and I would just imagine you have friends as well as yourself that are always wanting to learn English and develop that skill. So it's good for everyone to know a good resource on that. So
I have friends here, you would not believe, that their native language is deteriorating, as like literally I can see it deteriorating. I have a friend from Poland who speaks like literally every time I see him, I feel like his his Polish is getting a little worse and a little worse, because he doesn't interact much with other people, in his native language, but he just speaks English all the time, and his English is getting better. But at the same time, it's about like you got to maintain the balance there, right? And but with English, it's like I could probably settle on where I'm at right now and be like, okay, I'm gonna be fine, no point fucking doing nothing. But
you can obviously carry on a conversation just fine. Yeah.
But then on the other hand, like there are a lot of things, a lot of times, like at least in the past few hours, there were a lot of times where I wanted to put some sentence together, and it took me a while to put it together, and at the end of the day, I said it a little bit differently than I would like to say it if I had a little bit more time. So this is what I'm trying to work on at the moment, so there is really, so in other words, being a little bit more concise, a little bit more articulate, a little bit more clear. That's still a long way to go. So that's why I say, don't just settle on wherever you're at, just because you feel like you've accomplished something. You've accomplished something good. Keep going, because that's just the start. Like, how do you know if this is where it's supposed to end? Like don't be lazy. And I'm telling you this as someone who comes from a lazy background. Like my background, like my environment when I was a kid, I was around a lot of procrastinating people, who didn't really want to, who just settle for the fucking whatever, the mediocre, whatever, just the easy results, easy effort, little results, but that's fine because you can get by.
I was blessed with many of my friends weren't very hard workers, and I'm not organized, and so when it came to school, I could do well on the tests, but I couldn't keep the homework and the scheduling and everything together very well. So I started telling myself I was lazy, because I was disorganized and I didn't want to put in the extraordinary effort that it would have taken me at that time to keep everything organized. Like, it was just too much for me to do. So I'd rather say I'm lazy than say I'm kind of mentally inept. But I mean, it's what was my original point? Lazy and my mom. I was blessed that despite all that, my mom, when the shit hit the fan and she needed to take care of me and my younger brother, she worked 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, like flat out, just sleep and go, sleep and go. And when she slept,
Oh
it was
shit,
3 or 4 hours at a time. Like, she was
That's
just savage. And her health, ultimately, she started having health issues and other kinds of issues because of this and going so hard. But I feel like that helped set an example of what could be done and what full commitment to your family and to your life like looks like. Because she didn't have personal time other than, an hour of radio listening at 2 a.m, at the end of the day, where she's like falling asleep, halfway through listening to it. So I, outside of that, I definitely had a lot of lazy influences around me. My dad is kind of a lazy / just emotionally unstable and an addict also on top of that at that time. So my dad was dealing with a lot of issues, but definitely not an example of discipline or hard worker. But I was blessed to have my mom in that role when I was a teenager. So that helped.
Sounds like your mom is a fantastic person, and sounds like an excellent.
She really is. She's
model.
an exceptional human being. I'm very lucky.
And you have to admire something like that. You have to respect something like that, and you have to learn from something like that, from someone like that. From such, effort and and sacrifice, because it is a sacrifice, and it's selflessness, because she obviously did it for you. And for herself, for her family. And I had lots of issues with my mom as a kid, and it was a little bit different with her. She likes to think that she always tried her hardest, although it depends on how you look at it, really. Depends on where you set the bar.
I've heard similar things. No mom is perfect, no dad is perfect.
No,
and I
but
think
they always try hard.
I think there's a danger. There's a danger when you get older that you settle into being you. I got into an argument one time, and this guy literally just said, "I'm too old to change." And
fucking head out of
there is something there. Like, it shouldn't be that way, but yeah, there is something to people just kind of getting stuck in their ways, and like, they'll say they did their best, but more so what they mean is, I wasn't willing to do more. So I did what I did X amount or whatever. But
when
I
someone
think
says I've done my best, that usually is the most bullshit excuse they could come up with, but it's the most instant one. So it's just instantly available. And it's like the perfect shameless fucking excuse. Like, oh yeah, dude, it's been like, maybe it's not up to your standard, but I've done my best. Or like, yeah, I know the situation's fucked up, but I've done my best, so I guess that counts for something, right? No, it doesn't fucking count for anything, because the result matters, okay? Just like I don't care about your personality, really, when it comes to getting the job done. I just care about whether or not you can deliver on it. Just as much, pretty much as much. Sorry again, I'm a little baked. Just as much as I don't care about your personality and all that at work, it applies to what you were just saying. It is. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a Joe Biden moment here at the moment.
No, you're good. You're good. But yeah, it's difficult. It's
look,
it's difficult. Like, people will say, I did everything I could, I did the best I could, or whatever. But the truth is,
that's exactly what I was just saying.
Most people. I don't like to say that, because like, when people say when I heard as a kid, you got to put 100% effort into something, or like, did you do everything you could have? I took that maybe a little too literally. I'm like, if I can figure out that there was this, and I don't mean like I'm this hard worker, but what I mean is like when I was thinking about it, if I'm not spending 100% of my free time and effort trying to engage with this thing and get better at it, I'm not really trying my best. So to say you're trying your best when you know you spent any amount of time on anything else, it's like it's not a real statement.
Who are you?
Or you're lying. Yeah.
In the first place, why are you lying to yourself? And I've done my best applies almost never. Like it applies in about maybe 2 or 3% of the cases, I think. And for the most part, it's just a bullshit excuse that people keep telling themselves and everyone around, just to, again, because it's an easy way out, okay, of whatever an uncomfortable fucking encounter with someone. So rather than say I've done my best, this one, it was fucking, I've done my best. Don't even try and waste your energy on trying to figure out how whether or not this is best and what best really even means. Because if you're trying to get there, go down that fucking rabbit hole with me, then we can try and work out how fucking embarrassing that statement is, to say, oh, I've done my best, and then I'm gonna show you that you really have done very little. So don't fucking say that. I say, rather than doing that, try and focus on have I done enough to qualify this as a done job, okay, as a job done, whatever. Have I done enough? Or
yeah, like with the podcast, like
that's it. Like
I don't need to worry about it being the perfect podcast where I did everything I could have. I'm just doing a good enough podcast. I made sure I did my research, got the whatever details and outline I needed ahead of time, and good enough is good enough. Perfect is impossible.
That's it. So don't and at the same time makes the I've done my best quite an obsolete statement, because
when they say that, they're trying to avoid saying I was not good enough or I did not put in enough effort. They're saying, well, I did what I could. It's like,
don't say that.
Almost no one ever just does what they like. Almost no one ever does everything they can to try to get something done. Most people will try 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 things, and then they'll quit. And then there's some people that like bringing it full circle, like a Trump, with fighting the results of the election. And we can say whatever we want about the security issues and all that. It's a whole different question. But I believe what Trump was doing wasn't trying to disrupt democracy or any of that crap. He was literally just showing us with his actions, chase every possible avenue for victory down, like a dog with the taste of blood in its mouth. Like, if you think you have a 0.0005% chance of victory, you go chase it down and make it happen. Now,
speaking of dogs, sorry.
Yeah,
go on. I was just gonna say about how he said about al-Baghdadi that he died like a dog.
Died like a dog. Yeah, like a dog.
Awesome,
yeah, that's funny stuff.
Go on.
But no, I was just gonna say, and to that point, imagine if first off that there was provable fraud that happened in the 2020 election that could have been seen if the Supreme Court or other courts had actually looked at it or whatever. Just imagine that existed, right?
Okay.
Imagine if that 0.00005% chance of Trump succeeding worked. Afghanistan wouldn't have happened. Our economy would be even better, both yours, meaning the global economy, and the United States economy.
Mm-hmm.
North Korea kind of isn't doing anything. They're just kind of there. So whatever. I don't care about North Korea. Iran would not be in as strong of a position. Now we're in a position where we're probably going to prop up the Iranian regime.
I think
so.
That's
so much
dire.
Good. So many bad things Biden's done would have been avoided if more people had fought for that 0.0005% chance of victory. But because it was hard, because of emotions and what the news media would say, and anything else that might have been happening in the background with the FBI or whatever, corrupt government stuff, it didn't happen. People wouldn't fight for the election result. But I think, in my opinion, when I watched Trump at the end of 4 years, but really by 6 months in, I was watching him to see what he could teach me. because I felt like he was teaching through experience. Like he was out there just trying to
Yeah,
do stuff,
he
and
actually comes
everyone else
from, you
can
know,
see what does and doesn't work, what does and doesn't happen, and that'll sort out a lot of the BS.
because he comes from a place where you actually do the work rather than politicians. Politicians they just fucking talk. They don't really work. Whatever they do never really shows any results when you really think about it, other than maybe doing some damage, because there are very rarely any policies that actually do people good. So what they do is rather damaging. So in nature, you know, you don't really expect any good outcome. Whoever you really vote for, it always goes to shit. Okay, it always goes to shit. Pretty much, whichever party you vote for, you're always screwed. And Trump was the hope of the people, that someone from the outside, someone not from the fucking establishment of politics, but someone actually from, you know, from the outside that everyone knows, but someone who actually will try and do some good for the people, that someone like that is taken over. And he actually has done a lot of good stuff.
And I wanted to make a side note. I was talking about this with another guy the other day. But basically, the Republicans, the right wingers here in the United States, allowed Donald Trump in. So even though some of them are corrupt and establishment,
There you go.
they're open to change. And so moderates like me, I consider myself a moderate, independent, whatever, we're going to be rushing into the Republican Party to try to make it a real party for the people, and a real, you know,
100%.
a non-corrupt one. So now in the UK, you guys are kind of screwed. Your guys' conservative party sucks.
We're completely
And
fucked.
the Liberal Workers Party is literally communist.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
So
100% that
I don't know. So who do you know? So I wanted to ask you this. Who do you know in the UK that is good? That's a good politician or a good voice?
No one. This is what I'm saying. We're like, okay, look, Nigel Farage, okay, who everybody's fucking trolling. Everybody hates this guy for his policies. Look, I am pro-Brexit. I am a foreigner. I've lived in this country for 10 years now. Okay, I pay my taxes, whatever. I do whatever I gotta do, right? I pay my bills. I do whatever I gotta do. But I am pro-Brexit, because what is happening, this shit's getting out of fucking control. And the same is happening at the southern border of the United States right now. An absolute fucking disaster. Biden and his fucking border policy, which was just to dismantle Trump's very effective policy. Brexit was pretty much the same thing. They were just like, listen, enough is enough. Enough of this fucking
insanity. I think my brothers might be watching this. I mentioned this the other day, but so what a lot of people don't know is that there was a major issue with refugees, specifically Syrian refugees, coming into the European Union and coming into the UK. And because of the PC stuff you're talking about, they would commit a lot of really jacked up crimes,
really fucked up
and
shit,
and no one would handle it. So like there was in Rottingham, England, there was 1,400 girls over 2.5 years that were raped by Syrian refugees, and it wasn't really investigated as much as it should have, because they were afraid of seeming like they were Islamophobic.
Because of the fucking backlash. They're always fucking scared of, you know, like, oh, how is this going to reflect on my fucking political career? And this is the fucking problem that we're having. So this is why Trump was such a solution. Like honestly, still people now say DeSantis. Yeah, I agree. DeSantis is fantastic for the vice president, but Trump should get back into the office. But sorry, you were saying about fucking English clowns in the fucking government. Seriously, English government is a fucking circus. I swear to God, I could not think of one other person than Nigel Farage that actually does the fucking job. And yeah, he's friends with Trump. And people will say, oh, this fucking asshole, this fucking conspiracy theorist. Who does he think he is? He's a flat earther. I'm not a fucking flat earther. Get the fuck out of here with that. I'm just saying that if someone tries and speaks and exercise some common sense these days, They are being. That's it.
I'm sorry. This is a side point, but I think this is hilarious. I'm at a point now where there's so much bullshit coming from the mainstream media that part of me is like, man, is the Earth flat?
Yeah, like.
No, like legit, like to me, the thinking the Earth is flat is one of the most insane things ever. But I'm at a point where there's so much shit they've lied to me about and told me not to look at that I'm like, maybe.
Dude,
Like,
I honestly.
and I'm like, I know it's insane, but they pushed me to a point where I'm like, dude, like I'm not saying I'm gonna become a flat earther. I'm just saying I've gotten to the point where before I was
Where it
like,
wouldn't
no, those
be-
guys are morons,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now I'm like, I mean, I should look into it.
Yeah, seriously,
No,
dude.
I
Like,
think about it.
I absolutely agree. And you know, and not so long ago, I got deep down into a rabbit hole of the International Space Station conspiracy theories, that it's an underwater whatever, and or that it's like a fucking green screen whatever, where they record the and I saw a video of a frozen astronaut where the other two are floating, and I saw a fucking video and all that shit, and I saw the fucking bubbles like, and I was like, okay, dude, they're fucking underwater, and they're fucking us all, you know, over and all that, and fucking around with us, and I was like, and then I was like, you know, maybe I'm going a little crazy with the sun, so I totally closed all of the 120 tabs that I had open on Safari. I closed them all down. I was like, dude, I'm done with this topic, okay? I'm done with this whole subject, okay, of the fucking International Space Station. They're out there. I'm sure they're out
It's
there.
important. It's really important for everyone to remember that when it comes to those kinds of conspiracy theories, ask yourself, if it's all true and I found proof or whatever, what does it do at the end of the day? Like, who does it help?
Who
Right?
would benefit
Like
from
the flat
yeah,
earther thing, right?
that's
Whether it's
exactly
true
what
or not or whatever. Whatever it is, whatever the truth, does it make a difference to anybody? No one has a job now. Either way, no life
flat or
has been
round.
saved, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really add up to anything. So
Whether
it's,
we
and those
fucking live in a
conspiracy
simulation
theories,
or not, that's it. That's
those
fucking
conspiracy theories do the same thing that the fighting does, where it pulls us away from what we need to focus on. Because like even if
exactly.
it's interesting and whatever, if it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day, there's no policy or no substantive discussion to really have about it. It's interesting and I love hearing about it, but I'm not going to spend any time trying to look down that rabbit hole because again, I want to be productive and try to be, you know,
Exactly. This is
creating
what I'm
something of
talking about.
value with my time for myself, even not now I'm doing podcasts and all that, but before that, just for myself, you know, don't waste your time on things that won't make a difference, you know, unless you enjoy it,
100%.
unless you really enjoy it.
100%. But look, either way, dude. Either way, just try and do something that's meaningful, really. Whether it's meaningful to you or someone else, do something that actually makes, by the end of the day, makes you fucking tired and makes you feel good. Okay, because that's it. Because that's I am a big like I don't sleep a lot. I sleep 4, 5, 6 hours a night tops. Um, but I am a big fan of going to sleep when you're fucking exhausted, you know? And it's a lot easier to go to sleep when you're exhausted, when you've been active throughout your day. And I'm not just saying doing, you know, physical exercise. No, you can be active with your brain and you can burn just as many calories, I believe, you know, and or at least half as many.
You
And
definitely burn calories thinking like that, like you're using energy
and
anyway.
it's
So
actually
yeah, for
really
sure.
good. It's actually a really pleasant feeling to think and to actually see some, you know, something come into fruition out of those thoughts. You know,
Yeah.
it's a
And
really good
if you
thing.
can think enough to the point where you get tired of thinking, like your mental muscle is tired, that's
That's
a
it.
good feeling. That's a cool feeling when you're like,
Exactly.
oh, I used it. I used
That's
it.
it.
Like you do curls and stuff, and then this is tired or whatever, right?
That's
And then you're
it.
like, oh, dang, I used it. Yeah. It's
That's
cool.
right.
It's a cool thing.
And yeah, and that's, you know, that's how I see it. So yeah, I think, look, I think I've exhausted whatever the brain cells I had for now. but I'm more than happy to do it whenever you want to do it again. If you
Yeah,
want to
man.
do it again.
Yeah, I think we did it good because we covered so much of the ground for what's going on in the world right now. I think 2 or 3 months from now we'll have enough to talk about for another one because we went 3-4 hours. We did a pretty good long one. So but yeah, dude, this has been awesome. I really enjoyed having you on. I'm
Thank you,
glad
George.
you came on, and I hope you understand you contributed to this conversation too. I've really enjoyed it. I don't
Dude, I
want you
really
to.
appreciate it, but I'm
I
really
know
humbled.
sometimes people
Seriously.
downsell themselves, so I want you to not do that.
No, I look, I would never do that. But seriously, dude, again, I am humbled because I really appreciate it. You reached out to me. You asked me if I want to be on your podcast, and I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. If you don't mind, I'm gonna share it on my podcast as well. Obviously, I'm gonna say that this is Uncommon Conversations, so for people where to go. But I'm gonna leave a copy anyway. And yeah, thanks again, dude. Seriously, like I said, I always like to have a conversation, but especially when it's with someone that I can learn something from. And from you, I have definitely learned something today. So again, dude, I appreciate it. Thanks.
That's cool. Thank you. All right. Have a good one. Peace.
All right, take it easy. Good night, people.
Alrighty. Well, uh, does anyone have any questions for me right now? The comments are back open, or are open once again. Back open, I guess, whatever. And so I'll hang out here for about another 30 seconds to a minute. Anyone that has questions, go ahead and ask them. And maybe I should go longer because I think there's a delay here. But anyways, yeah, I'll hang out long enough for any questions if anyone has any, and we'll go from there. Do 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 do. All right, that's it. Peace, people.